What was thought to be impossible was made possible. I never thought a man's head could be so big that he could eclipse the sun. Yes, it happened and we're all in the dark, but the light is now exposing the truth.
He doesn't want to do an interview with you though, right?
No, he won't. Doesn't want. He told Rick he doesn't ever want to talk to me again.
Okay.
What that means is that Bill Mitchell has just knocked himself out of the box. That means that he doesn't count, and it's going to be us or whoever's left over who's going to be in this documentary.
It'll be a fresh point of view. I mean, it'll probably be more technically oriented than the other documentaries were. I mean, I haven't seen Chasing Ghosts yet, but you know, I thought they were just powder puff pieces, and they didn't really get into the technical details. And you know, what were the problems with these types of events? You know, nobody really would talk about that. They would just say, "Oh, well, can you do another close up?" You know, like, and it's just narcissism, isn't it?
No, and that's what I'm protesting against too, because it's the community. If it wasn't for your friends pushing you, or your rivals pushing you, or you hearing these astronomical scores about something did in some mythical arcade, you would have never tried. And so sometimes the bogus scores push legitimate scores into reality where they never would have tried that hard.
I've known you, Dwayne, for I don't know how many years now, maybe, 10 years or so, like this, and what happens is you read around and you read stuff on forums and you read stuff here and there and you listen to what other people are saying, and then you just kind of say to yourself, wait a minute, I was told this and now I'm reading this, and it's like, okay, so you question that particular person, like, okay, where did this information come from, and how did this get arrived at? And basically, with you've always been, a straight shooter with me. I've never had to look at anything you've ever told me, Dwayne, and backtrack it and say, okay, well, wait a minute, is he full of shit or not? I don't have to go back and check something that you've told me, because if it's going to be the truth told one time, it's not necessary to go and do that.
We are brothers, and we go all the way back to the beginning. He, me, and Billy.
There will always be the argument that video games are meant to be played for fun. Believe me, some of it is a lot of fun. Video games are meant to be played at home, relaxing on the couch, amongst friends, and they are. And that is fun. But competitive gaming, when you want to attach your name to a world record, when you want your name written to history, you have to pay the price. Even though I'm the subject and storyteller of this documentary, this is not a propaganda film.
Everybody wanted to play Pac-Man when it first came out.
This is a story of the perfect Fraudman.
The holy grail of video games.
And truth is stranger than fiction.
Anybody can play it. That's the thing. Women can play it, kids can play it, men can play it. It's the most well-known video game out there in the world. So, if you can conquer that, then if you can master Pac-Man, you can master almost any game in the world.
The Pac-Man microprocessor is a Z80, an 8-bit machine, and 255 is the largest integer that can be stored in 8 bits. When the game program adds 1 to 255, it gets a value of 0. The 8-bit register has a rollover, and the game thinks that it's on 0 board. This is the cause of the split screen.
I believe that the kill screen is called a kill screen, and not just for Pac-Man but with other games, for a reason. Because it kills off your game.
Either, in order to get a score higher than what a perfect game is, you actually have to be able to get by the split screen. And if you can't get by the split screen, by definition, you have a fixed amount of points. From your experience, is it possible to get by the split screen?
No, I haven't found any way to do it.
I haven't seen anything that says that you can, and knowing the way that the hardware and the technology was built then, you probably can't, because you're getting into essential garbage at that point in time. The game doesn't know what to do. And so if the game doesn't know what to do, how can you as a player, succeed or get past it?
Yeah.
A lot of these games here, there's, memory limitations, magical numbers, if you will, dealing with bits and bytes that the programmers at the time never thought it was conceivable that someone would get 256 extra men or get past 256 levels or something. It wasn't something thought of when the games were made.
There's been numerous false claims about outrageous scores that go way back in the 80s. One of the most infamous ones is this Jeffrey Yee character, Jeffrey Yee.
My highest score on Pac-Man is 5,844,040 points.
And like there's these like young guys, like maybe, I don't know, they look like maybe 14 or so. And like the Chinese guy, like he was claiming a score of like over 6 million.
That's Jeffrey.
And like he crapped out and got, I don't know, like 1.5 million or something. And then the other guy got all the way to the end on his first man, like, and he was showing like play like on the split screen. I thought that was really cool, like, and like like I wish like they had us like asked like the other guy, like, how did you get past that board that we just saw? Like this. Like,
I actually ended up getting in contact with Richard Morey, and he actually explained to me, he was the one who actually taught Jeffrey how to play, and he said that no, Jeffrey never got by the split screen, but what he did, he actually saw Jeffrey's dad put in extra quarters, so basically it was a cumulative score, so, you know, it wasn't necessarily anything malicious, but obviously you can't take a continuous score where it's more than one credit game to get your total. He's a little 9-year-old kid who claimed he got 9 million on Pac-Man, and Ronald Reagan actually sent him a notice, a letter, presidential letter, commending him on his achievement. There are a couple liars like that were early on, right from the beginning with Walter's first poster. Like, we've had problems with liars like right from the beginning and early on, but Walter doesn't know anything about video games, and so he believed people would lie about a video game score. It's not that big of a deal.
Yeah, well, I think that's actually a nice quality in somebody, to be so naive like that. It's sort of refreshing, but it's, you know, obviously there can be problems there if you're trying to keep track of video game scores, for example.
Also claimed to be able to get past the split screen on Pac-Man, and which we know isn't true. Be able to get past the kill screen. He claimed a higher score than. But I've never heard. Have you ever? Has Bill ever told you what Steve Saunders claimed he did to get by that screen?
it's bullshit. Like, yes, I've asked him about it. He says it's part of Steve Saunders' lies.
And then another character, Sam Blackburn, on that same Twin Galaxies poster that Walter put out, had him claiming to be able to get past the split screen. He was actually recently featured in Chasing Ghosts. Ken French was another player that got credit off that Twin Galaxies poster where he claimed a higher score than is possible. So there's been so many people who have lied and cheated, and they never actually did what they said.
And you know, right when he was about to clear, he's like, "Okay, you don't turn back around and get out." And you can see that he's just. Well, I can't give too many details, but you see that he does a little bit on the end, and then it advances, and you've got the new cherry, so to speak. Yeah, it's a cherry, but it's like the first ninth key again.
And then like there's this thing that Les Martin would do, which I think is despicable. He'd have like a group of people watching him get to 256, and he'd say like, "Okay, I don't want you guys seeing me like play this last board," and like he'd kick them out of the room like for a couple minutes, and then he'd go behind the machine, hit the rack test, and call them all back, and he'd be on the cherry board like this. And like some people thought, and that's how the rumors started, like, oh, he has a way of clearing it, like, and nobody knows, like, this, but yeah, that's another way of cheating. Like, you can't go inside the machine and hit the rack test while you're playing. Like,
Les Martin hasn't come forward at any time recently to try and show people how to get by the split screen, so we still think that his score is bogus and that he hasn't come forward to claim the $100,000 prize. So
I think people like that, suddenly they're confronted with the idea of a kill screen, and what do you do in a situation like that? You're already lying about your score, so you have to make something up, right? Oh, I know how to, I can handle that, right? But of course, you can't. Nobody's at least come forward and proven that they can, so.
okay, well, I'm going to set up the rack advance, and what that allows you to do is to be able to go through the boards without actually having to play them, and that's the only way that we know that you can get by the split screen. Switch position 7 from off to on. That's what turns rack advance on. Hit the start. So technically, that's actually what these boards are. You complete one rack of dots, and then it goes to the next board. Complete eating all the dots, it goes to the next board, and next rack, next rack, next rack. And what this option allows you to do is to be able to go through all the boards without having to be able to play them. See, now you see what happened. The game's going back through all the beginning levels like it would at the beginning of the game, but it's actually playing at the 9th key speed. Of course, all the 5 perfect Pac-Man players that I'm focusing on are my friends. Chris Ira, Rick Fothergill, Tim Balderramos, Donald Hayes, and of course Bill Mitchell.
So I said, okay, I'm going to get Perfect Storm Pac-Man this month.
I got my own full-size arcade machine and went after the Perfect on the arcade as well. I got that finally in 2004, and then I got the Perfect on emulator as well.
And I said, at some point I said, yeah, I'd like to try to get a Perfect Pac-Man, because only 4 people had documented had done it before that. So I said, that's something I want to try. I'll see if I can do it. I actually got the Perfect Pac-Man about a month after that. I had taken a break. I went off. I played a table tennis tournament I had coming up, so I prepared for that, and I got back from that. A couple weeks after, perfect game.
The video arcade classic has finally been conquered. On July 4th at a New Hampshire arcade, 34-year-old Billy Mitchell became the first person to master Pac-Man by recording the first ever perfect game.
That Billy is a very positive, very good person. I mean, he can be cocky and stuff like that at times, because we know how wonderful he is. We know how incredibly positive he is and how good he is to people. And that's the Billy Mitchell that the people have to see based on the evidence that's brought out.
I said, maybe it was actually Knight Rider first. It runs all over the world. I mean, I did interviews in newspapers, countries, languages I had never heard before. It was crazy. I'm driving down the road, my cell phone rings, I answer it, it's the BBC. Mr. Mitchell, you're on the air. So anyway, I said to him, I go, so I can understand you heard the story. I said, but so what? There's stories all over the place. It's a big story. How did you know it was true? How'd you know? I mean, you decided to call me. You had to have wanted to know if it was true before you called me. Yes. He says, we call Namco USA. He said, we asked Namco, can we trust Mr. Walter Day? They said, Walter Day only speak truth. I says, truth? He says, yes, truth.
It was unbelievable, says Gary Vincent, FunSpot operations manager. Mitchell purposefully arrived on July 1st, Canada Day, and he won the title in time for the 4th of July. He even wore a red, white, and blue, a star-spangled banner tie to emphasize the patriotic sentiments behind his efforts. Mitchell, who refused to eat until he beat the Canadians for the world record, went hungry for nearly 2 full days. I had to be the first, Mitchell explains. It was like Neil Armstrong walking on the moon. No matter how many people accomplish the feat afterwards, it will always be Armstrong who will be remembered for doing it first. And best of all, it was an American.
What happens if there's somebody American, I mean, you really, really don't like them? I mean, you want to say the most derogatory, he says, we call them a medical.
Microsoft points for you as well, my friend, to enjoy. Thank you so very much. Representing Canada, who will be recognized and crowned as 3rd place in this competition. Any words for our friends back in Canada?
I'd just like to say, man, you gotta get this game, it's great. My friends Neil and Rick, who are perfect Pac-Man guys in Canada, this one's for you. I don't know if we're getting older and fatter and stuff, but it's good to see Pac-Man is alive. I'm really impressed with this game, and I just say, I'm so glad to be here, and I'm glad to compete against everybody. This is like, I hope this is only the beginning of things for Xbox Live. So there was a big promotional thing done by Xbox Live and Namco with Pac-Man and Quizno Subs. They had a big contest online, and they were taking different winners from different regions of the Xbox Live network. There was one winner for Canada that was going to get a free trip to New York City if they qualified, and I played, and I actually ended up winning Canada, so I got a free trip. My friend Tim Balderramos from Minnesota qualified, and he got a free trip, and Bill went there too, and so we were all there playing, and everything was going good. I actually, you know, one of the storylines that most people don't realize is that the way that the contests work, we played original Pac-Man, but then they totally unveiled this brand new Pac-Man World Championship Edition, and that's what caught everybody off guard. And so we're all learning how to play this game at the same time, and it went through a round robin competition or a tournament style competition where out of all the 10 players that were there, 2 people would be eliminated with the lowest combined scores on down to the finalists. And I ended up getting 3rd, and but I ended up hurting my finger at the end of the contest.
My finger, man. Look at my finger. That's why I lost. Is that like are you going to be put on the injured report list? That's what I'm saying. I was asking the players if can to give us more funding so we can have medical attention, psychics, and motivational coaches.
So if it wouldn't have hurt my finger, I should have finished at least 2nd, if not won it. And I was kind of disappointed about that, but it was just a great trip. Got a chance to meet some neat people, and it was just a great experience for myself, and I was proud to represent Canada and finish 3rd. Twin Galaxies actually shut down, you know, many times. It was morphed into many things. Twin Galaxies in 1986 never made it through the summer. It actually got sold or shut down, and it was through a lawsuit that Bill and Walter, as owners, tried to sue some other players, Steve Harris and Jeff Peters, and what ended up happening was they wanted to get $1,500 apiece from the players in order to publish scores in Guinness, like they were trying to extort money from us. And what eventually happened is Walter went off to go back to meditate, and the thing was sold for $1,000.
And we ended up buying the rights to Twin Galaxies and everything that went along with it, including all the high scoreboard, from Walter Day for about $1,000. I heard that Bill Mitchell actually, you know, gave Walter a lot of money in exchange for, you know, majority ownership in Twin Galaxies.
2 days ago, and Billy's the most distinguished person in the book because he's the only person to have a full page that recognizes his status as the video game player of the century. He was crowned the video game player of the century at the Tokyo Game Show in 1999.
He's an honorary guest because he's the first one to get the first perfect Pac-Man. No, he is playing. He's an honorary guest. He has the first perfect Pac-Man score. He's invited to the World Championship.
So does it mean there's 11 people?
Yeah, 11 will be there, I think, or maybe 12. I don't know. Like, I never even knew Bill was coming till the other day when I found out.
He's so mysterious.
It's like, James, did you watch that trailer? Oh, Billy Mitchell. I've always got a plan. Tell him the story about in Japan, his bag fell. Hey, that looked like Mr. Walter Day. That was funny.
Well, it was the 2nd day in Japan. The girl says, the first day she asked me, and then the next morning she was asking me again. And they're very regimented. She says, Mitchell-san, we're here, we'll eat breakfast. We'll finish approximately 9:15. 9:15, we'll have a short conversation. By 9:30, we'll get in the car. We'll proceed to the other venue. We'll arrive there at 10:30. Okay, at 10:45, you'll have a meeting. I mean, everything is very structured, extremely orderly. I says, okay. And she showed me an email from a guy, Walter Day. I wanted to know what my opinion of it was again. So I was telling her about it, and I told her everything, and she had some photos, and her and her assistant, both of their names are Mr. Ishii. She's Mrs. Ishii, that's Mr. Ishii, but they're not related. And the hotel in Japan was $600 a night. $600 a night. And so he wasn't going to pay for his own room. My room had a double bed, so he stayed in mine. Well, I went down and I met, and I was meeting the Japanese friends, and they were telling me the venue and the structure for the day. And then Walter came walking, and we had just been talking about Walter. And you see this guy walking, he's carrying all kinds of bags. He's got bags like this and like this. And he's got one bag in each hand, and he's got a bag pinched between. And he's walking, he looks like halfway wacky. And the guy, Mr. Ishii, sitting there, and he points over his shoulder. He says, he sees a guy in a striped outfit. He says, "That look like Walter Day." And I go, "Oh, I think that is Walter Day." And he says, oh. so the little bellboy who doesn't speak any English goes running up to help Walter because he's struggling with holding his
He's
bags.
trying to grab his
He can
bags.
barely walk. He tries to grab the bag and Walter's, no, one of these. The bag that's pinched between the two falls down. And it's the bag with his medicine. It hits the ground, breaks.
All the pills are
and it
everywhere.
runs all over the floor. And I go, yeah, that's Walter Day.
Billy's our hero in many ways because he's been such a good leader and charismatic person and he's been so devoted to help people. So it's only fitting that society honor him for his incredibly good qualities.
So it's 2007 and Xbox Live is having World Pac-Man Championships, and Bill has all this notoriety for being the first perfect Pac-Man supposedly, and myself and Tim Balderrama's played on Xbox Live and we qualified for the finals, and Bill qualified, or he says he qualified. He actually used a fake controller, or he used a controller that wasn't actually part of an Xbox machine. He told me, oh, why don't you get somebody to make you a controller, whatever like that. It actually goes against the rules. Like, for Bill being supposedly such a great player, why did he have to get somebody to make him a controller? He told me that, in hindsight, I didn't really care, or at the time I didn't really care. I thought, well, whatever. I thought he was a victim from the King of Kong stuff or whatever, but, so I didn't really think too much about it. But in hindsight, if he was such a great player, why wasn't he able to qualify for the Pac-Man Championships like all of the other players had to? And then the other thing was, we asked him about that, or Rick Fothergill asked him about that, and he said, oh yeah, Microsoft, those guys made me a controller. They knew that I was doing that. It's like, well, that's against the rules. If this, again, like, if this guy's so good, why does he need special favors, or why does he have to have the rules bent to his favor so he could actually qualify? He should never have been there. He broke the rules, and he should have to pay Xbox back all the money that he got for being there, to compete. It was bogus.
This is the new record book that just came out 2 days ago.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. Bill is in there, and Dwayne's in it, and Tim Balderrama's are in it.
Have 6 remaining finalists. Also, we have probably one of the most famous people in this entire room here is Billy Mitchell, who, I don't know if you know, but in 1999, Billy Mitchell went to Japan and received some very special honors. And he was, this is even from a world record book from the Twin Galaxies folks. He was named the Video Gamer of the Century. Also, MTV recently named him one of the top 10 most important video gamers. So, just like to have Bill Mitchell come up and congratulate him on coming and participating.
I'd like to introduce the 10 finalists to you. And so, from each of these, I'd like to say again, these are the very best players from each of the regions. They were the head of the leaderboards that we held during the competition in May. In 8th place, a legend in the Pac-Man gaming archives, with the first perfect score in the original Pac-Man arcade version, from Florida, Hollywood, Florida, Billy Mitchell.
Well, when I was called to be in this contest, I said I was going to get whipped.
Walter's promoting Bill. He's the guy who gets a full page in the book or whatever. Like, well, who the hell made the book? Well, Walter and Bill are tied at the hips there. Walter makes up whatever history he wants, and everybody believes it because nobody knows any better. Like, it's like they say in the King of Kong. It's in Twin Galaxies' best interest. It's in Walter's best interest to promote Bill in such a way that, they hold their lives together and they have everything rehearsed so that they know what to say if they're ever put under pressure. But the thing is, I know what happened. I was there for a lot of things, and I'm tired of them getting away with all this bullshit.
We are brothers, and we go all the way back to the beginning. He, me, and Billy.
Well, we were just playing for fun.
Yeah.
Well, so what? Pac-Man. Well, perfect Pac. Okay, no one can beat that. They just tie it. Okay. Miss Pac-Man. Chris Iris got that. What did you have in back in these?
And then Abner got it.
Yeah, no one stopped anybody from taking these records.
Oh, it's all a friendly rivalry.
If you do it legitimately, there's no problem. The problem is, if we don't call foul, no one else has the expertise too. And we don't do this to everybody. We only do it when there's a reason. And it's like, you cannot go in a court of law to get another expert. We are. Guinness calls us to tell what a world record is and why it's a world record and why it isn't. If we are the experts, we're not malicious or malevolent or whatever, but we admire people who can break our scores and play at that level. You know, even to Bill, I said, Bill, this is your life.
Well, I'm definitely there behind Billy.
Yeah, Walter's behind Billy all right. The only time Walter sees the light of day is when Bill Mitchell farts and Walter's head pops out his crack.
Billy's a good guy.
My main thing is that I have to get out all the true bits of information so that truth will prevail, and so that then the public will know what the truth is, and they'll decide how they want to view us, you know, but at least we'll have the truth out there, and that's the most important thing.
What are you willing to do to be able to get a high score? For us, like, it's not a big deal. For some people, you know, and especially, you know, since now, like, they want to get their name in Guinness or whatever the reason is, and then with this documentary stuff. If he's not happy with a wife and kids, what's gonna make him happy? He's not satisfied with that? What more does he want out of life? Well, he cashed your checks, that's a good sign you didn't bounce. Your kid's college are safe, you know, like, that's the thing, like, you know, this too shall pass. You may have to take a few lumps, but your kids are going to college, like, you know, what is that worth? Even all this bullshit, like, your kids are gonna go to college. It's paid for. You know, like, what more do you want? Like, you can only be young for so long. You gotta get old. You gotta move out of the way for your kids. You gotta
deal with people that tell the truth. That's
Oh no, I know that's Tim's heard me talk about that all the time. Like, I can't stand people who lie. I don't deal with people who lie. I have enough stress in my life. No, I don't actually have any stress. The only stress that comes in my life is when I have to deal with people I don't know and I have to learn, do they tell the truth or do they lie? I don't deal with people who lie. If I have to, you know, I will learn and I'll adapt, and I'll tell them right at the start. You get one chance. One chance. Life is too short. I can't fix your problems. I can't solve your problems. I can't even fix and solve my own problems. I don't have all the money in the world. So if you lie to me and you ask me for this and that and the other thing, I'll help you once, but if I find out you're lying, I can't trust you and I'm not going to waste my time because you don't even take your own life serious because you won't even tell the truth and be honest. No, I don't know how people can live like that. Like, these guys must be, because you have to deny, you have to live in denial for a long time till the lie catches up. You have to remember all the fucking lies you told to keep the story straight.
You gotta tell more lies that cover.
And the stress and the stress and the stress, how do these guys sleep at night? They're going to die young. Heart attack, stress.
Apparently some of them sleep like babies.
It doesn't bother me any. Their day will come. No, you gotta get a contract verified with lawyers. You can't. These guys are all lying bastards.
When you signed off your life rights, did you get a lawyer too?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was an LA lawyer.
I guess it all boils down to you have to keep in mind too that Walter was out of the scene for a long period of time. There was a number of years where he wasn't really the scorekeeper anymore. So in the late 80s, there were no contests for Bill Bastable to go to. There was no Walter Day or Twin Galaxies to talk to at the time. There was nobody really doing classic game scores.
I don't know. I don't think Bill Bastable's asking for a lot.
Well, he just wants to be accepted in the community. But as long as Bill Mitchell's head is in the way, he can't get to the door.
I know Bill Mitchell is like trying to say like no one ever did it before, like under any circumstance, tournament or not, and like I don't think that can be substantiated. Like I wanted to say like an example from another field, officially like Edmund Hillary summited Mount Everest in 1953, but there is evidence that there was a couple mountaineers that summited Mount Everest in the 1920s. Now they don't get official recognition, but it's like the same story, right? Like,
You're asked the question, but you answer that. Just talk a little bit about that, because the thing is, you've actually hid nothing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's the thing. Like,
and who's the one who's hiding it? People who don't want other people to know about me. There is a motive there.
He doesn't tell the story, so he pushed. So even if he would have found out in 1990 Bill Bastable didn't deserve official category, but he did it or whatever like that, it's cover up. No one else matters except me. Me. So one of the crazy things that we found out along the way is that not only did Bill Bastable do it, but what happened because Twin Galaxies wasn't around and there was no one to take video game scores in '88. Bill Bastable did it, but because he had the machine at home, he actually didn't have such tight, stringent rules placed upon himself to have a proper submission. And what he did was he learned about the rack advance, but he also learned about the freeze. So what he did was in the middle of his game and on the night key pattern stuff, he actually froze his game in the park spot. It wouldn't really have changed anything because the guys never would have actually got him in the park spot, but because he did that and he actually admitted that he did that, we found out after the fact that now we have to reduce Bill's score into unofficial, but it does go in the history annals as being done September 4th, 1988.
Rick definitely needs to get credit for what he's achieved in Pac-Man. I'm not exactly sure what the people are doing that do whatever they do and you know, keeping track of or looking at what people have done, but I think what Rick has accomplished in Pac-Man speaks for itself, and I think he ought to be getting credit for it too.
And well, it's kind of like, I just wanted to, okay, I'll let you know, like, just like so you have like a full like understanding of like what the reassurances I was giving these other people, because I wanted to make sure like they understood like no, like Dwayne won't do that. Like Dwayne, like he'll mention it and then maybe he'll try to put it in the best light he can, but he won't leave out the fact that Bill Bastable froze the game. Like,
so if there's no governing body or agency to oversee the thing, then you know how can they say if there's nobody to tell me how to do it or to guide me that I shouldn't have been parking it and then freezing the board? Because my attitude was that by the time that I got there to the dots on the right half of the board, that I didn't want to be exhausted. Now, back in the old days, it was casual to go all the way in there and, oh, let's see what I can do, because nobody got into the machine to, you know, see what they could learn about the last board. That's the only thing I didn't know. Now, I'd like to look at people and say, what's important? The dots over on the right, or the rest of the game that made Pac-Man what it was, that I already was in the newspaper by June 20th of 1983 in an article in the Daily Register saying clearly or explicitly that I had 3,332,820 in that article.
Yeah, one thing I want to say about this whole situation with the 9 dots is that Bill Mitchell actually had his own Pac-Man game, and if it wasn't for Bill having his own Pac-Man game in the 80s, there's none of us players that had our own game. He could use Rack Advance to be able to find out about the 9 dots, and so he knew about those 9 dots to using Rack Advance as early as 1984, and yet, you know, he just let it go, let it go, let it go, let it go, and you know, now he wants to try and whine and complain or whatever like that and say this, that, and the other thing and say, oh, Bill Bastable isn't as good, Rick Fothergill isn't as good, and the whole situation is simply that Bill just doesn't seem to understand that if it wasn't for his wealth, he never would have found out about the 9 dots in the 80s, and so both Randy Tufts and Bill Bastable would have had the first perfect game minus the 9 dots. So that's one thing people need to keep in mind, and that it's Bill's lack of respect for other players that he thought he could just toy with them, and the fact that they could underestimate Bill Bastable, that oh, he'd never do it, he'd never find out about the 9 dots, or he'd never be able to get his own game. But obviously that's not what happened. So regardless of what anybody says, I stand behind Bill Bastable and put my own reputation on the line, saying that he did do it, and exactly, it may not have been perfect per se, but the goal isn't perfection. The goal is the fact that it's a human achievement, and nothing that we do as a human in achievement realm is actually perfect. So there, so fuck you, Bill. The laxity that they have for their own policing, like who's going to police the police is the saying.
Yeah.
You know, and Walter
but,
sure is.
I don't know, it's weird though, like Bill thought like that would like just destroy your entire project.
But he's crazy.
And I said like,
it makes
no,
the better
like
story.
just like he's gonna do his movie no matter what. Like this, I guess like that's why they were concerned. Like maybe you'd leave it out because they thought it would destroy your entire movie or something.
No, but it shows the health of the community and who is unhealthy in the community, or who isn't in the community and doesn't want to be part of a healthy community. That's what it exposes.
Right.
And that that's the, you're gonna be, when you see that interview I have with Bill Bastable, you're gonna be blown away. Even for myself, I was blown away, like, because he has a bigger picture of reality, and he's much more mature than Bill Mitchell is, and that's the difference. Narcissistic is an individual who is described as being excessively preoccupied with issues of personal adequacy, power, prestige, and vanity. That's
Oh wow, that's like a different. I don't know. Like, I'll never. I guess I can never like fully understand that because like that's not the way I think about things. Like I can't go like fully like do like a mind meld and say Bill like this is how I see it, like just to make him understand, like because like he saw like his way and like the way he was explaining it to me and his tone of voice, I could tell he believed he had done nothing wrong. And what am I supposed to say to that? There's nothing I can say. Like this, like the way I saw it was like, oh, like the competition like would have been way better, like for the whole gaming community and like.
No, but there's a definitive chance that he wasn't going to beat you, and he doesn't want to.
Probably a very good chance.
Well, no, he would have beat him. That just would have been the way it would have been. And that's what he didn't want, because he wanted to be first and control everything and spin it the way he did. He couldn't ever take that risk because he never would. He couldn't even beat Chris Ira.
Yeah.
Never, like, why didn't he? If he was gonna, he could have brought Chris Ira. Because when I interviewed Tim Serby, the guy that they screwed on the King of Kong, and like what Tim said, you know, like you've never suffered through austerity. You don't know what it's like to go through hard times, really, because money is a buffer, money is a cushion. And
it's mostly Camelot for an individual of that kind who can stuff his mattress or his pillowcase with a bunch of this.
Yeah, and that's the thing. So Bill actually doesn't realize that it's not the money that's the problem. It's the fact that you hide behind the money to get your way, to keep your storyline going. That you're an asshole and you never faced yourself and when you look in the mirror, you shouldn't see a big mullet of hair. You should see fucking 2 butt cheeks and a big fucking hole that stinks like shit that you speak on it. Symptoms. May take advantage of others to reach his own goals. Tends to exaggerate their own importance, achievements, and talents. Imagines unrealistic fantasies of success, beauty, power, intelligence, or romance. Easily becomes jealous. Lacks empathy and disregards the feeling of others. Mainly pursues selfish goals. Appears as tough-minded or unemotional. Psychopath. Characterized by a one-direction pervasive pattern of disregard for or violation of the rights of others. Psychopaths have a total lack of empathy or remorse and are generally regarded as callous, selfish, insensitive, dishonest, arrogant, aggressive, impulsive, irresponsible, and hedonistic.
On one hand, I guess you'd say he's like legally, technically correct. We did not have a written agreement. However, we did have a gentleman's agreement. And by him doing that, he's basically saying to me, Rick, I'm not a gentleman. I don't know how to put it any clearer than that.
Well, no, but that's the thing. Like again, like that's exactly clear and succinct. And well, what do you think about Walter, the way he handled that whole situation and the way he promoted Bill and the way he put you down?
Once Bill had his game and they had released it, done their press release and got all this media attention and especially from like Japan, like it was like, no, like we have to make it so that it's only ever been done once and like it can't be like that there's already like 2 people because it can't be that easy, like, but I think they really like dropped the ball, like as far as I'm concerned, because it was all they already like a lot of people already knew like 2 people were like fighting for it, like back like in May, because there's like lots of media about that, like, so is it any surprise that like there ended up being a second player doing it, like, and is that what it's all about? Like just
But like, who pays for the press releases though too? That's the difference.
Oh, I don't know. Like, it's like, I don't know. It's like, oh gosh, you're gonna be going again. This is not good. It's like another level of like dishonor. Like this. it's like, do you love playing the game? Do you love the video game community? Or like, is it about you and promoting you and promoting how you do on this game? And notice how many times I said you. Like,
well, you could speak in the third person if you're Billy Mitchell. He's just being Billy Mitchell. I think I mentioned that to you, that it's not so much the scores or whatever like that, but it's those scores that actually get you into the peer group. And the fact that you were isolated from the peer group for all these years and no one knows exactly what you can do, and this elite group of players that understand how significant your accomplishments are, that's the worst of it. That total social isolation. That's one of the worst things you can ever do to a human
What I
being.
believe that's called is sequestering. When somebody stops somebody from talking to somebody else, there obviously is a reason or a motive for that. And what I think people ought to do is go to these individuals and say, well, what of it? What is the reason for this?
Pathological liar. Defining characteristics. 1. The stories told are not entirely improbable and often have some element of truth. 2. The fabricative tendency is long-lasting. It is not provoked by an immediate situation or social pressure. 3. It is an internal motive for behavior. 4. The stories told tend toward a presentation of the liar favorably. There are many consequences of being a pathological liar. Due to lack of trust, most pathological liars' relationships and friendships fail. If it continues to progress, the lying could become so severe as to cause legal problems, including but not limited to fraud.
It's been 12 years.
You know, and Bill keeps telling all these lies. I told him a year before that radio interview, I said, stop telling that bullshit story. You and I know that's not what happened. And that's when I was still calm. But he keeps going on, it's like he ignores all this stuff. Like,
it's more dramatic.
You know, Bill, you commented to Bill, you know, he can make a movie about me. Like, what's he gonna do? It's like these guys. We are the experts. These people are all my friends. They know who I am. I say what I mean and mean what I say. What you see is what you get. I wouldn't be saying this if there wasn't something wrong. Both about Weeby and about Mitchell. And about Walter and about all those other. Like, it just, why would you lie about a video game score? Like, this is a subculture. They destroyed this subculture by trying to create lies to make it popular when there never was anything there to make it popular, in the sense of them paying us to play these games we enjoy. They won't pay us. They won't give us any money to play. The only interesting thing about this story is the human drama.
This is very strange. Bill Mitchell has said to me on several occasions, Pac-Man was the most popular video game ever. And I just say, okay, fine, I agree with you. But he goes more than that. He says Pac-Man is also the most recognizable symbol. And I'm not sure about that, but okay, fine. So he's like really hyping it up, like, and playing it up. And the reason he's saying all this is because who got the first perfect Pac-Man score? Billy Mitchell. Therefore, you follow the logic. Like, oh, okay, like that means that Billy Mitchell is associated with this, and therefore, Billy Mitchell is like the most popular video game player ever. And he may be right, but
that doesn't mean he's the best, though.
Right, and
that's the thing.
If you're an egomaniac, you're gonna like focus on that.
Because knowing, well, part of my educational background, you know, did master's work in special education, and all of us are human beings, and what I get out of Bill is a certain amount of, I feel a vibe of loneliness almost off him. So I almost, after watching that film and listening to Walter stick up for Bill, and then listening to that, I almost feel like he's the spoiled kid that doesn't have any friends, you know? It's like, well, I'd really like to have a friend.
I like the way that ends. I like the way that ends. I like the way that ends. I like the way that ends.
2 days ago, and Billy's the most distinguished person in the book because he's the only person to have a full page that recognizes his status as the video game player of the century. He was crowned the video game player of the century at the Tokyo Game Show in 1999 because he had the most distinguished career in video game playing, because he was the person who had 5 listings in the Guinness World Record book back in 1983.
So you can see that there's a big difference between Bill getting a shitty 2,400,000 score and a Guinness versus being this great player as if he's the best in the world. Bill isn't the best in the world. That's a bunch of bullshit. You know, and the way Walter blows his career out of proportion, now we're going to start going through this and showing that even amongst a community, no one actually thinks Bill's the best player. He got that award, but it's just... you know, it was a press release award that basically he never won anything, never played against anybody, no one else was in contention. So, you know, we're going to start debunking the mythology. So obviously, Walter's story about why Bill got the Player of the Century award doesn't really make any sense. It was just a nominal award that was a promotional thing. He didn't have 5 Guinness World Records, and so right off the start, Walter's blowing Bill's career way out of proportion. Okay, Robert, you want to talk about your experience with Roy complaining about Bill's Player of the Century award and his take on that?
Roy Schild called me up on several occasions asking me several questions regarding Bill Mitchell's being awarded the Player of the Century. One of Roy's questions was who else was in the running for the award and why was Bill chosen? Now, I wasn't part of the selection process, nor did I have any influence on the award, but what I told Roy was that, to my knowledge, the award was given to Bill because the person at NAMCO or whoever was the president that decided to give out the award, he did it with respect to people that he knew and games that he knew. And quite honestly, he knew Pac-Man and he knew Bill Mitchell. There were no other contestants that I was aware of, and the award itself didn't exist before the Perfect Pac-Man was done or announced, and therefore the award was custom tailored to one individual. Now, I don't have all the facts to support that, but there is no mention anywhere of anyone else being contended for the award. Roy was questioning that because he felt he should be given some award. He always does. But
one of the sad things that we discovered on the journey was that a gentleman named Randy Tufts, who was one of the greatest Pac-Man players, died, and he was actually quite well known in the 80s just through his letters and his accomplishments that were recorded in Joystick magazine. Bill actually talked to Randy over the years, and he tried to determine whether he was a real player or not. And you know, the thing is, most people don't know about Randy, and Bill didn't want anybody to know about Randy. But one of the ironies in how this story unfolded is that Rick Fothergill actually played the same arcade that Randy Tufts did, and he actually knew Randy, and he wasn't there when he was playing the Pac-Man and getting these Pac-Man things, but he had a chance to talk to him, and his high scores were recorded at the arcade back when he did it, and he actually had a perfect game minus 540 points.
His perfect score in regulation in February of 1993.
So that's a sad point, but it's also a point we're going to remember him by. If you want to talk about how you acquired this shirt?
Yeah, I told the company back in either September or October, I mailed them my information on what kind of a score I had at that point in time. Was a 3,332,820 or a left tap of Mace 256 perfect game. Again, based on the fact that back in 1982 or late in that year, I didn't know about the 9 dots that were on the vanity board, and when I got the correspondence from them, they sent me a letter with the shirt that I'm holding, and they said that there were some other people who had higher scores at that point, but that was somebody probably that shouldn't have gotten an award from Ronald Reagan, that was claiming, like, what was it, 6 million or 9 million points at the time.
So Bill Bastable actually had gotten the 3,332,820 points many times, not just once, but many times, 540 points short of the perfect game, and he did it before Randy Tufts. And so these two players most people don't know about, but we're going to continue on with the story and continue on with the intrigue. So actually, one of the strange things that I didn't know is that Chris Heyer actually, through the help of Darren Harris, they actually tracked Bill Bastable down and found out that he was in Sarasota, Florida. So on November 4th, 1986, Chris Heyer rode up to Sarasota and met Bill Bastable and played him, and came to realize that he was a legitimate player, and now the story gets interesting. So one of the strange things that happened is that, okay, you find out that Bill Bastable and Chris Heyer met, And the impression that Chris Ira gave Bill Bastable was that they'd already had a perfect game, both him and Bill, back earlier in the 80s. And he actually showed Bill Bastable a photograph that actually had a higher score than what was possible, the 3,332,820, which again was bizarre. But then at the same time, Chris was telling him about these 9 dots that were on the binary side of the board and that they regenerate. So and he gave him the idea that if you play with 5 plus 1, that would be 6 men, plus the 90 dots, or 90 points for the 9 dots, and that they regenerate. That's an extra 540 points. And so it gave Bill Bastable the idea that he could use the rack advance to try and find where the 9 dots were and continue on his pursuit of a perfect Pac-Man.
Well, what I thought it was originally was that as long as I got through the left half of Maze 256 and ate up all of it, was obvious that 3,332,820, I believe it is, used to be what I thought, or I perceived as a perfect score in original Pac-Man. Then, well, as I was playing back then, or as I had met Chris Ayer and Bill Mitchell, it started to dawn on me that there was something else going on about the right half of Maze 256, where the rainbow colored letters and numbers are, where you have 16 columns where you can move the muncher, and 32 rows other than these little walls. If somebody had a terrain map, they'd know where these are in particular within that particular arena. Now, I didn't know it at the time that each muncher was worth 90 points, and that if you had 5 men and a bonus at 10,000, that you could have 6 times that 90, which is 540 points, added into the 3,332,820 to give a grand total of 3,333,360. So once I got the game, I think it was either in 87 or 88, I don't remember exact dates on these things, I set about trying to rack test it up there and learn what it is that I didn't know about the right half of Maze 256 so that I could complete the job or complete the mission of actually getting a perfect game. And I did that by 1988. It takes about 15 minutes to send this game all the way to Maze 256, because it's going to take that long to go through this stuff. And then once you stop the rack test and you dump yourself out on that board, then you can fool around with it and you can find out what you can do or what you can't do. And I fiddled around with it until I understood it well enough that I thought that I could go after the perfect game, and I did so.
Chris and Bill's meeting. What did Bill say? Because because basically it boils down to, everyone seems to think I'm the liar and they never lie, and I'm the liar and I'm just making this shit up. Where, well, if Bill Bastable did not know about the 9 dots, how the fuck did he find out about them if Chris Ira never told? That's the only way. That makes perfect sense. But Bill is saying, oh, there's no way Dwayne's lying. Bill Bastable's lying. Like, how the hell is that possible?
We're all lying. It's not possible. Not in this universe, anyway.
Yeah, and you're a bad comedian in this universe too, man.
No, I don't have anything more to say about that. I agree with you.
Okay.
It doesn't sound very likely.
Okay, well anyways, okay, well...
That's the whole point. I'm convinced that they got one by 1983 or 84. I don't know the exact timeline, but I remember when Chris Ayer was here, he kind of showed me jokingly a picture of 3,333 or just a 333,090 or something like that, and he wanted to see how I was going to react to it, you know, to see how I was and stuff like that. I know that he had a perfect game, even though he showed me what he showed me.
Oh, see,
at the time that I seen him in October of '86.
Basically, this whole adventure has been, it's what I didn't know then that I know now.
I'm Rick Fothergill. I am from Whitby, Ontario.
So, you were actually one of the first people to score a perfect Pac-Man game. How did you come up with that idea in the first place?
Of getting a perfect score?
Yeah.
Well, I was always interested in Pac-Man from the early 80s. And then I realized that there was like a maximum score you could get. We went to a tournament in 1999, the first annual Fun Spot tournament. And at that tournament, Bill Mitchell was there, and he decided he wanted to go for the perfect score as well. And the original settings of the game were 3-man and 1 free man at 10,000, and because you can do dip switches and set it for 5 men, they decided to make the settings for 5 men so no one in the future can ever claim they had a higher score. And the perfect score became 3,333,360.
Okay. So do you want to just talk about when you went up to the Fun Spot in 1999 and the background behind the attempt for the perfect Pac-Man?
In 1999, I think it was Neil Chapman, Rick Fothergill, and myself. We all went down to the Fun Spot Arcade in Weir's Beach, New Hampshire, and there was all this talk about, okay, everybody was going to try to get a perfect game, and now I don't play the Pac-Man games really very much, just as sort of like a casual thing. So I wasn't part of this attempt to get a perfect game on Pac-Man, but the way, as it turned out in Walter's book, he kept referring to a score of 3,333,180, and that was what I considered to be a perfect game, and that's why I thought those guys were shooting for that. Then later on, I realized that they were going to play with 5 men plus 1 man at 10,000, and so the perfect game became 3,333,000. What was it? 380. Okay.
So the interesting thing about the rule change, the rules always back in the 80s were 3 plus 1. You couldn't find a game that was 5 plus 1. And you know, in hindsight now, after talking to Rick, and even now I see how Bill works, I know Bill intentionally manipulated them trying to get the rules to be changed so that they would move it from 3 plus 1 to 5 plus 1, so the perfect score moved from 3,333,180, which you could have got on a machine back in the 80s with the way it was set on the factory standard, and he got it changed to 5 plus 1 so that he could have a higher score. It wasn't that someone else was going to get a higher score, it was that so he could have a higher score so that someone like Bill Bastable, an unknown Pac-Man player to the world, didn't actually get a higher score than Bill, and Bill could always claim, well, I have the higher score if Bill actually did it earlier in the 80s. If Bill knew about you, because they knew you could get the one, you know, the 3,301,180 ending, did Bill have in the back of his mind, with you in mind, knowing that you could do what you did he intentionally want the rules to be changed so that you know, that you couldn't be recognized, he could one-up you because he knew about you and he wanted to keep you quiet?
I've attended every single Fun Spot since the first one, which was back in 1999.
Me, stupidly, I went and said to Bill and Chris, I'm going to go for the perfect Pac-Man score at that tournament. Because it's never been done. No, I shouldn't have said that. I should have just kept the lid on.
Yeah, that was the problem.
Oh my gosh. Because, you know, we were planning on doing, I was going to do it and Neil was going to do it.
And that's
Two Canadians, just like that.
And that's not what happened, though.
No, that's not what happened. So as soon as we show up there, the first day of the tournament, there's Bill Mitchell sitting at the Pac-Man machine.
He wasn't even supposed to show up.
It's like, I don't remember any of these patterns and blah, blah, blah. I'm just like, oh, somehow I have to fight through this, and oh my gosh, whatever.
Rick and Billy, you know, they were alternating back and forth on the Pac-Man machine, and they were both, I'd say, within striking distance of getting the perfect Pac-Man. Each of them knew that the other could do it, and I think what was happening was they were basically running out of time, and that I believe the first year was just a 3-day event, and here we are on day 3, and Billy had his chance and he wasn't able to pull it off, and Rick was there on the machine, you know, having a great game, and the crowd's just getting huge. I mean, there must have been like 30 people surrounding him, cheering him on, and you know, right at the end there, he gets to the kill screen.
I get 3,333,270, which is 9 dots short of perfection because I lost a man shy of the kill screen.
You got all the blue time kills, but you died somewhere along the way in a knife key pattern.
2.5 million points, I died. Then you lose the 90 points because you don't kill yourself at the end.
To get the extra points.
Right. So, okay, tournament ends like 3 days. It was a 3-day tournament the first time.
Yeah.
and then we all make an agreement that we will wait until our next meeting.
You, Chris, and Bill, yeah.
No, not, well, Chris too, he was like down in Florida, but Neil was there.
Yeah.
Right? That we will wait until our next meeting to go for the perfect score again.
Okay, well, what I saw, and this was right after Rick Fothergill had completed his almost perfect Pac-Man, that there was a gentleman's agreement, a handshake, if you will, between Rick and Billy Mitchell, and the agreement went that no one was to play that game, Pac-Man, for at least a year. Now, it wasn't clear when the next Fun Spot event would be, because, as I recall, I think the first Fun Spot tournament was in May of 1999, and they wanted to push it out because some of the college kids weren't able to attend, so they decided to make it the weekend before Memorial Day weekend, starting with Fun Spot 2. But in any event, the two of them definitely had an agreement that said neither one is to play the game either privately or in a public venue and break the world record and get a perfect Pac-Man. That they were both to wait until Fun Spot 2, date to be determined, and attempt any new world record at that point.
I think it was 3 days long, wasn't it? 3 days? And so as you can imagine, there weren't that many attempts. And then my understanding was, and then I think Rick came the closest, he, it was nine dots off the perfect. So it was 270, 3,333,270. And which is really as close as you could get, because, you know, to get those 9 dots wasn't too difficult. So the difference between what Rick did and Perfect Game was very, very small. And so he had the world record on Pac-Man. And my understanding of it was that those 3 or 4 people, I'm not sure if it was 3 people or 4 people, but there was a very small group of people that had decided to retroactively make the rules so that it was 5 men plus 1, and that the perfect game would end with 360 points rather than 180 points. And now, I couldn't tell you exactly what was said, but my understanding was it would be the next Fun Spot contest after the one we were at. So we were there in the summer of 1999, and then next year they would all come back and try it again under tournament conditions, under contest conditions, right? So that was my understanding of what happened, and that as we know now, that didn't happen. Bill came back on his own, and it wasn't a contest or anything like that. And he managed to get the perfect game, but it sort of went back on a gentleman's agreement that I believe that they all had, and that was my understanding of what was discussed.
And then...
Well, what happened after the tournament was over? No one achieved it. Did Walter Day make some kind of announcement in the arcade about you guys playing again or having another showdown with other players involved? And talk about that or name the players that were involved.
Yes, he did. Me, Bill Mitchell, Neil Chapman, Chris Era discussed it and decided that it would be best if we all went head-to-head again, being more exciting and give everyone like a fair chance of doing it. And Bill Mitchell agreed. We all agreed to do it. And then at the end of the tournament, on the 3rd day, the last day, Walter Day was talking about who did what achievement and blah blah blah, and he then announced that we had an agreement that we were waiting until the next tournament in order to go for the perfect score on Pac-Man. And I thought, as well as Neil thought, that everything was kosher and we would practice and like go for the perfect score the following year. But then Bill Mitchell did a sneak attack and went for it on July 3rd of 1999. And I feel like he went against our agreement. Now, this was not a legally binding contract. It was just like a gentleman's like handshake type thing. But like I felt at the time that he would honor that, but obviously he didn't.
Well, what did Neil feel about the situation? What did Chris Ira say about the situation?
Chris Ira said, I did not find out this at the time. This was like after the fact. But Chris Ira said Bill Mitchell saw an opportunity and he took it. And it was a big secret thing. He went up there and he did it.
So how does that secretiveness that most people don't know, because publicly he says, oh, he likes to play in public, he likes to play against competition, he wants to show himself to be the man under the pressure. Comment on that. How does that fit in? Because I didn't know this stuff, and I'm personally offended by what's said and how it actually goes down.
Well, he totally contradicted himself. Just like, I don't know, like this. Like he justified it in his mind. Like I don't know for sure, but like I think it's something like he said to himself, like, "Oh, I never signed a contract. Like I can do that." But okay, that's fine. He's right. He didn't sign a contract. But still, like you have your honor too. Like,
well, yeah. So did Chris Ira ever talk to you about how he felt about what Bill did, or he didn't care, or how did Chris deal with it?
I don't know. I didn't get exact details like for about that aspect of it. Just it's basically like I think like he's just like going along with whatever Bill says. Like I don't know. I couldn't get him to like admit that he's offended. Like just like maybe like in private like he has a word to say about it with Bill. I don't know.
What did Neil have?
But I could like sense the contempt when like he said it.
Next thing you know, it's July 4th weekend, and I happened to be in Weirs Beach that weekend, and I went over to Fun Spot, and this was actually a day later after all this happened, but it turns out Billy Mitchell had flown up there. I think he flew up on Wednesday night or Thursday. He was definitely there for a couple of days.
Yeah, he went there July 1st to 4th. He went there on Canada Day, of all things. Canada Day to Independence Day.
He made one attempt, I believe it was Thursday the 2nd. Thursday, July 2nd, 1999. And unfortunately for him, a kid walked behind the Pac-Man machine and unplugged his machine. And so he lost all his game in progress, which was, I don't know, 3 hours of work, let's say. So at that point, Billy called it a day and came back in on Friday.
He gets the perfect score on July 3rd, 1999.
It really makes me question the honesty and integrity of Billy by him kind of breaking that agreement that they had.
So it was actually 2008, and when I just started finding out about Bill Bastable being real, and I actually made a comment to the chief referee at that time, Dave Nelson, about the perfect Pac-Man, and even Dave Nelson thought there was something wrong with the fact that Bill submitted a score, because he was there at the Fun Spot. He heard that agreement, yet everyone wants to be keep quiet about this. Everyone's scared of Bill or Walter, whatever, like, as if it really freaking matters. I'm like, these guys are all cowards, and you can't trust as far as you can throw them, and they don't really want to know the truth like we do. So one of the big surprises for me was when I found out what actually happened at the Fun Spot. What Bill said and Walter said versus what actually happened and what Rick told me are two different things, and this is what we're going to go into now.
There's certain things that I think, yes. Like, the one thing, like, definitely, like, he says he never lies, and, like, there's proof that, like, and he can't, like, wiggle out of it and, like, say it's something else. Like, he knows that he was wearing his American flag tie garbage in 1999, and I was the Caped Crusader, Captain Canada, in 2000, and that's like, that's definitely innocence. Like,
yeah, because he tells the story that he was playing a Canadian dressed up with the Canadian flag tie, and he calls you goofy and being over the top, and he's more reserved and didn't start wearing the American flag tie. But
yeah.
it was officially, it wasn't until the Fun Spot 2000 that you did that, and that technically was supposed to be the first time you guys played head to head at the Fun Spot to go for the perfect Pac-Man. Which is, there's a lot of irony to do with that.
Boy. I dressed up as Captain Canada in response to seeing an 8-foot high poster of him in his tie right in front of the Pac-Man machine at Fun Spot, proclaiming his greatness that he had done the perfect score. And I decided, well, I'm gonna be like crazy patriotic Canadian, like, which you never see, like
Yeah, no, that makes sense. It was a reaction to what Bill did.
Can you please tell about your different high scores of your different classic video games?
Well, you make it sound as though video games are what my claim to fame, and that's not true, but I'll entertain you anyway.
All right, thank you.
All right, we start with Centipede. The score is 25 million. There's Pac-Man, which is a perfect score.
Wow. Tell about a perfect score in Pac-Man. What does that entail?
Oh, it's on every single board, you get every single dot, every energizer, every prize, all 4 blue man.
Wow.
On every energizer, and there's 256 boards. Now, when I actually did it, I did it over between a 5 and 6 hour period because there were interruptions and there's like people and media and reporters like interviewing me in the middle of the game. But it would actually take closer to 4 hours if I was to do it now.
Could you pause
it? The thing is, you have to accomplish all that.
Yeah, the classic arcade games.
Yeah, you have to do it on your first man. You can't die even once.
Wow. You said between 4 and 5 hours. Could you actually pause the game while you were playing it?
Yeah, I did. I sort of, well, not paused it. I would put it in a hiding spot.
Okay.
On the loop while I sat there and talked to a reporter. Sometimes they even answered the phone.
Wow. Now, people who know Pac-Man, sometimes when you eat a power pellet, the ghosts only stay blue for a couple seconds. How do you eat all 4 ghosts in only like a couple seconds?
So you actually have to have absolute control of the game. You absolutely control the movements of what the enemies are doing on the screen. It's really boring to talk about. It's a lot more entertaining to watch.
Well, I'm pretty excited, but when you were competing for this record, you actually were competing against people like from other countries too. So you were competing for the U.S.
Yeah, well, where the flag tie came in at was my nemesis in the Pac-Man world. What I commonly refer to my friend as the number 2 man. He was from Canada, and he used to wear a Canadian cape, a flag, and they called him Captain Canada.
Right.
And I just wasn't willing to match him on that level, so wearing a tie was about as goofy as I wanted to get. But the truth is I arrived on July 1st, which was like Canada Day, and I achieved it I wanted to do it by the 4th of July, and I did it on July 3rd. And it was more of a friendly rivalry. You know, I've had people tell me that it was such a militaristic thing. He and I are deep personal friends, so it's kind of silly for people to say that, but it makes for a great media item.
So obviously there's something seriously wrong with that interview Bill gave in 2008. One, Bill was the one dressed up in the flag tie and was the nationalistic guy. Two, for him to actually call Rick a deep personal friend in the way that he screwed him, which is really quite bizarre, that's strange. And then the other thing too is that most people don't know, Bill stole that line from me, the number 2 man. Donald Hayes and I have a joke. I don't know if you guys remember that scene from Austin Powers where he's sitting on the toilet and he's like flushing the toilet there, fighting with his turd or whatever. He goes, "Who does number 2 work for?" And between Donald Hayes and myself, we have a private joke where I always ask him, "Who does number 2 work for?" Because I've beaten him a few times in the World Championships, and he always finishes second. But we're pretty close as players. He's a really good player, but that's our private joke. But and it's friendly, where Bill is just trying to make himself look better than he actually is. So obviously Bill's going off and talking to himself and about how great he is and how hard this is to play against himself and play against nobody. I really wonder whether he'd say silly things like that if actually somebody was there. And on the other hand, the point I wanted to make in this section as well is that notice that Bill is playing on the 9th key and he's using a pattern, so he didn't freestyle or freehand for the whole game like Walter says. And so again, they just keep making up stories, and most people don't know the details and don't realize how to use proper words to categorize exactly what Bill did in his perfect game.
Came out 2 days ago, and Billy's the most distinguished person in the book because he's the only person to have a full page that recognizes his status as the video game player of the century. He was crowned the video game player of the century at the Tokyo Game Show in 1999 because he had the most distinguished career in video game playing, because he was the person who had 5 listings in the Guinness World Record book back in 1983, 84, 85.
So Bill had 4 scores in the 85 book, and then he had 3 scores in the 86 book. None of those scores were done at a Guinness contest, so I don't know why they are in the book. And then from self-evident that the 1986 book has one David Palmer, who is, I believe, and everyone else, simply just by the numbers, he had 7 Guinness Book scores. The only one that's ever been beaten is the Tron. So he, by far, is the best Guinness performer. I don't know what Walter talks about with Bill.
He's the person who was the founding member of history's first official professional video game team back in 1983. He's held more world records than almost anybody back then during that early era. He also is like a very close friend to Mr. Nakamura, who congratulated him on the stage in Tokyo for his distinguished achievement of being the first person in history to do a perfect game on Pac-Man.
So obviously Bill used patterns. Walter blows that story, way out of proportion again and distorts it. They never really want to stick to the facts. The fact that Bill took 6 hours is a whole other thing too, that Walter actually changed the time in the Guinness and put it down to 5.5 hours. And I'll go into this here a little bit because the reason why they did that is because Donald Hayes played and grouped like Bill that it only took him 5 hours and 50 minutes, and he played straight through. He took his traditional breaks or whatever when he was grouping like they do in the first hour and a half to 2 hours, but he played straight through right to the end and did it in 5 hours and between 5 hours and 15 minutes and 5 hours and 25 minutes. And the question you have to ask is, why did Bill take 6 hours? So now we're going to go on to Donald's perfect Pac-Man story. Yeah, so you're actually one of the people that got a perfect Pac-Man. And what were you like? You were like 6th, I think it was, or 5th? Or?
6th. I mean 5th officially on the arcade machine, and 6th overall because Neil Chapman had done one on MAME in the middle there somewhere. And
yeah.
It depends on who you talk to, like which ones count, which ones don't. It's like they all count. So I just say right now there's 6 people that I know of that have actually done it. I was the 6th one out of those 6.
So talk about this, because the thing is I've informed you about different things where Mr. Mitchell has a problem having co-champions. He actually, what do you think about the difficulty of a perfect Pac-Man? Even just talk a little bit about your journey to get a perfect Pac-Man, because you had a lot of advanced information than the average person, say, back in the 80s, and it was doable back then and was done back then, but that's a whole other story. But just talk a little bit about that and the things you have to learn to get to that point.
Yeah, a lot of it was just a matter of having the desire to go for it, because I had seen people out there, Rick Carter for one, who has the techniques and the ability to do it, but he says, I just don't care. I know I can do it myself. I don't need to do it, actually do it. And to me, that's his right. There's nothing wrong with that.
Cop out.
But for me, sort of. To me, if you say you can do it, at some point you got to sit down and prove you can do it. That's part of what it is. I mean, I can say that I can get 20 million on Centipede, but I know in my head.
Yeah, good luck.
It's like I know in my head I could do it, but I know how long it would take and what it would do. So I can't just tell people I can do that. I've got 7 million, I've got 1/3 of it, but you know, can I stay awake for 27 hours to do it? It's a whole different thing. So actually doing it and having the knowledge to do it is two different things. So I sat down, I said, you know, that's one of the things I wanted to do. After I had done a bunch of other records, like, you know, the Frogger, Super Zaxxon, all these other things, I said, yeah, it'd be nice to have a perfect Pac-Man. I want to see how hard it is, and, you know, that'd be a nice accomplishment. Because a few years ago when I did it, that was considered one of the Holy Grail accomplishments. And it took me probably a year on and off of learning grouping techniques, learning, you know, getting a good pattern, sitting down and actually doing it, and sitting down and actually doing it. When I actually had the knowledge to do it, it probably took me a couple months to actually sit down and physically do it and actually accomplish it. And I made a couple of attempts up at Fun Spot. One of them's on King of Kong, or the end of one of them is on King of Kong, a very famous scene. So, I mean, that's, in a sense, yes, it's hard to do. It's definitely not easy, but it's not the hardest thing I've done. A million points on Joust is harder.
Oh, I would say so, yeah,
And,
definitely.
You know, rolling Centipede over and over, you know, 5 times, 6 times, 7
is
times.
harder.
Doing shoot 'em up is harder.
It's harder.
Super Zaxxon is harder. You know, and I've gotten almost 1 million on that. So there are harder things out there, but it's still an accomplishment which can be done, but it's not this out of the world type of thing that, you know, everyone should just bow down and say, you know, that's the greatest thing of all time. You know.
Well, especially when you're the 6th one to do it, man. You're down on the pecking order.
Right. And there's 4 other people ready to do it. I mean, Greg is ready to do it. Greg Skundiak and.
Well, Rick Carter. I've seen Rick Carter group. I've seen him just grouping. Yeah.
Yeah. There's
Art could do it. There's any of these Pac-Man, Miss Pac-Man players could do it.
Yeah.
See, and this is the funny thing. What do you think about what Art said? And this is what I thought. This was really quite profound. He says, "I don't believe it took until 1999 for someone to get the first perfect Pac-Man."
Right. Right.
Because that's if you understand how difficult Miss Pac-Man is, and the players that could play Miss Pac-Man.
They knew how to play it back then, so yeah.
And we'll talk about your experience visiting Bill Mitchell and Chris Hire down in Florida, because we talked a little bit about that, where they're very secretive players.
Yes, I found that out firsthand. We actually discovered something. I'm actually sworn to secrecy. Well, not really, but we actually discovered something on Pac-Man on the reunion game that hasn't been made public yet. So just even based on that, I know there are things that they keep to themselves, because that's the way they are. They have these techniques or these secrets, and they want to keep them to themselves for whatever reason. But yeah, they both had the knowledge. I'm convinced. Chris definitely had the knowledge back in the 80s. And he actually, from what I recall, I've talked to him a couple times on the phone, I've talked to him in person, and from what I recall, he indicated that he had the knowledge and the know-how to do a perfect game, and I think actually did it back in probably 83 or 84.
Yeah, see, that's what I've had other sources say, and the thing is, I've had other people say Chris did it, and I've had other sources say that Bill did it.
Right.
Because, you know, and the thing is, they had the knowledge, and that's the one thing most people don't understand, because there's 2 different definitions of a perfect game, and I've tried to get this stuff winnowed out, you know. Damn it, answer the question. You know, Darren Harris is like, answer the question. I know you have the answer. You're not going anywhere till you answer the question. So finally, he answered the questions. And he told me that he had a long conversation with Chris Ira back in '86. So he had all the math already worked out. He had the 9 dots technology. It was what we call a perfect game, 333360, whatever.
Yep.
That technology was around for sure by '86 and confirmed by external witnesses. But at the time, we know that by 1984, which is around the time that Chris already could get to the kill screen on Miss Pac-Man,
right?
You know, one of the first people to do that. He had the technology for grouping Pac-Man ghosts and had all the blue ghosts up to the 6th key. And up to that point, that was perfect.
Right.
It was just the question of going through the 9th key and going all the way through.
Right. It's the same thing as what Art was saying on Pac-Man Plus, or this other guy that offered the bounty. Why watch somebody do 235 boards of the same thing over and over? That part's relatively easy compared to learning how to do the grouping and actually doing it. There's discussion about which part is harder. You know, is it harder to get all the blue times in Pac-Man, or is it harder to do the 235 boards without making a mistake? And it's kind of like, some people say it's the first, some people say it's the second. So.
Yeah, and so that's really quite interesting. So this is where all the controversy comes in, if there is controversy, because Bill Bastable swears that they were able to do it before he was. And the thing is, he's an interesting character. He's really quite modest, and it's like one of those things where people don't understand. It's like, well, why'd you call it Mount Everest? Because you're the 15,000th person to do it. It's like, well, it's not about what someone else achieved. It's what I want to achieve in my own life.
Right.
And the significance of, can I do it? Yeah, I can do it, and I'll show you I can do it. Talk a little bit about that aspect, about why you play games, even like, because the thing is, it's not so much, or even look at it this way. This is what people have suggested me, and I actually agree with them now. And as far as history goes, or historian, this progressive knowledge in the development of the breaking down of high score achievement, like any other sport, they keep track of the people who are before, and they keep track of the people who are and who could be yet be.
Right.
Where this bullshit with the way Twin Galaxies work, they're only focused on the winner, which is, there is no such thing as the winner, because there's no prize. It's just a score, and even if you get it in the Guinness book, it's irrelevant, because there's a whole community of players behind the scenes that were the pioneers or the developer. Like,
when I actually did it, I did it over between a 5 and 6 hour period, because there were interruptions, and there's like people and media and reporters like interviewing me in the middle of the game. But it would actually take closer to 4 hours if I was to do it now.
So from both Donald and Bill Mitchell's comments himself, Donald actually did the same thing that Bill did. You know, it didn't take him very long. He just worked on it casually, and actually ended up doing it. It's not the be-all, end-all. But the funny thing that people need to pay close attention to is that Bill is evasive in this interview and how long it took him to get the perfect Pac-Man. But in the MTV and the other earlier ones, he said 6 hours. If it took him 6 hours, and I'm convinced it actually took him longer. He never said how long exactly it took him, but no one's also seen the tapes. I got part of one tape where that comment came out of about him talking to himself, that Bill took way too much time to actually have a legitimate submission for Guinness and even for any record book. And they reduced the time in order to make him look better than he actually was, because Donald did it, like I say, in 5 hours, and between 5 hours 15 minutes, 5 hours and 24 minutes, whatever else it's described here in Guinness.
And if you don't know what a perfect game on Pac-Man is, I'll tell you right now. He had to go through 256 screens, eating every single dot, eating every single fruit, getting every single blue man, every single power pellet, to the 256 screen, which took him 6 hours, playing it freelance without a pattern, without dying even once. So that put not only Billy Mitchell on the map, but it actually put arcade gaming on the map again. So he is the distinguished person in video game playing history, so you have a very important alumni here, and that's why he's the person who has a full page in this book of records that just came out a couple days ago. This is the one for the whole arcade industry.
Give us the thumbs up. It's just like, insert in butt Bill Mitchell. Ever hear about marathon rules where for every hour you played you were allowed to take 5 minutes but no more?
I've heard that from the Guinness rules. They've always said it's like that's their, I think that's their standard time for any marathon discipline, is you get a certain amount of time, you know, as you said, per hour that you can build up, and you can't really, it's not worth taking it. It's not worth taking it 5 minutes every hour or whatever. But most people, I think, you'd play for like 12 hours and you bank like, whatever that is. It's about an hour's worth, and then take the hour and then come back into it.
So just the way you have a lot of experience playing games for a long duration, so you didn't really have any problems concentrating playing for 5 hours, and because I think your official time was 5 hours and 15 minutes.
Yeah, it's between 5:15, 5:25, something around there. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because that was the thing that I was wondering about, is because Bill actually took 6 hours, but they say that because you actually grouped that way and it only took you 5 hours and 15 minutes, they actually have put in Guinness that it only took him 5.5 hours.
Oh wow.
Yeah, because all the live interviews, he said it took him 6 hours. His tape actually says 6 hours.
I think I remember hearing that, because I remember him talking about it, and because he'd say he'd get like a cell phone call in the middle of the game, so he'd park it and go talk for 10 minutes and do whatever, and I think that happened a couple times. So.
Well, yeah, no, that's the thing, because he actually took not to be a stickler, but the thing is, he took more breaks than actually he legally was allowed.
Right.
And because I never thought too much about it, but after starting to consider like his whole way he did everything. So he's under scrutiny. So because I just wanted to confirm whether you were aware of that 5 minutes for now. Because the thing is, when I talked to Bill Bastable never took any breaks either. Or he parked for a bit, maybe on the 9 key or whatever like that. But he was used to playing in the arcade or whatever. Like in the arcade, you would never let your game sit there.
Yeah.
You'd never let your game sit there because someone's going to ruin it for you.
Right. Yeah, I've seen that happen. You leave the game parked, and you come back 2 minutes later, and someone's sitting there playing it, or it's over, or like that.
Yeah, no, so that's what I was wondering. And now we're going to fill in some background on Tim Balderamos's Perfect Pac-Man.
There was a lot of other great gamers out there that mastered so many different titles. But as far as me, you always hear about Jack of all trades, master of none. Well, I was a master of one, Pac-Man. Finally, after meeting greats like Billy Mitchell, Dwayne Richard, and the like, I decided, okay, maybe I need to push a little bit higher as far as Pac-Man. At that time, we knew about the concept of a perfect game. I decided to go for it, first on the emulator. And then I got my own full-size arcade machine and went after the Perfect on the arcade as well. I got that finally in 2004. And then I got the Perfect on emulator as well.
Okay, talk about your background. What motivated you? Like that relationship with Neil. Tell me a little bit about that. How he motivated you to play.
Well, when I first heard about Neil Chapman, we were going back and forth online about Pac-Man and our best scores and so forth, and he was one of the first people to tell me that it was possible to max out Pac-Man to get a perfect score, including the infamous 1 second boards where they only turn blue for 1 second. And back in the day, we figured that that was unattainable since they were so fast. There was no way that anybody could get all the ghosts at that on those boards, let alone all 6 of them. And in all fairness, my first thought was, okay, Neil must not be playing it straight with me, because I figure, okay, there's no way. So I started asking him questions that only top players would know. Unfortunately for me at the time, he had an answer for every question I had. And then he actually sent me a demonstration where he played it perfectly through the first 1 second board, the first Galaxian. And at that time, I was at the point where I went from not believing it to not really wanting to believe it, because, oh boy, I thought I was up here, and I thought this was the top level, but then all of a sudden I realized there's people up here. And it's like, okay, I credit Neil for driving me, because I wanted to be up here, right along with, him, Billy Mitchell, Chris Ira, Rick Fothergill, and the like.
Wow, that's amazing. So you did it on the emulator, and then what was it like when you were actually doing it on the arcade machine?
Doing it on the arcade machine, it was almost like I was in my own little world, which was kind of, it was sometimes more of a hindrance than a help, because back in the day when you had the big bustling arcades, you had all the white noise, you had all the excitement, the buzz, the crowd, and I fed off of that. I really loved that. Where when I went for my perfect game on my arcade machine, there wasn't that white noise, there wasn't that that electricity to drive off of. So actually, I thought it was a little harder to do it. In 2004 than it would have been back in the day or at an arcade.
So after you got recognized as a perfect Pac-Man player, how did your life change?
Well, it was amazing. It was as much a surprise as it was an honor, to be honest. To be perfectly, it was just surreal. It was almost like I couldn't believe it to be in the same sentence as Bill Mitchell, Chris Ira, Rick Fothergill, and then Donald Hayes. We can't forget him. We can't forget Neil Chapman either, because we got to throw him in the mix with the emulator, because he was the one that really kind of pushed me and saying, okay, I need to work on this, because he's gonna, he was so close to getting there. It's just amazing to be considered, one of the best. And at the time, I just wanted to be really good at this game. At the time, that was the game. And to be, one of the best at one of the best games. It's you just look back on it, it's like, wow. It's like, you can't believe you're one of those guys.
Now we're going to start to deal with Chris Ira's controversial Perfect Pac-Man submission. They're pretty good liars and pretty good backstabbers, but I haven't seen them actually do anything to...
Well, one of the things about, one time Chris had the perfect Pac-Man. I had the fastest perfect Pac-Man, and at one time, I'm not a ref anymore. I used to be a ref for Twin Galaxies, but I saw Chris's tape for the tape that he submitted for the fastest perfect Pac-Man, and it was not, to my knowledge as a referee, what you're supposed to look for and what you're supposed to do. It wasn't a perfect tape. There was all the 1 second boards were blipped out, and when he got to the 9th key, his 9th key pattern, it stopped at the 9th key and then it started again at the split screen. So, I mean, that wasn't a legitimate tape. It never should have been accepted. It never should have been posted.
Here's again. Like, what did you think about Chris Ira's tape and the tape that I found out was submitted that I got from Robert, his chief scorekeeper?
This is a good question.
It had all the breaks in. Like, do you think that was an acceptable?
Okay. There's 3 different competing theories as to what happened here, and it's also like quite interesting. Like the theory that's put forward by like a different party corresponds to like their position on the whole like argument. Like, okay, we'll deal with Chris Ira first. He says he submitted a full tape and he doesn't know what happened to it after that. Okay. B, then we deal with you. You go to Robert Merzak's and like he's I want to be accurate here.
Well, he got all
Is he
these
throwing it out, or was the box just sitting there and he didn't want to deal with it?
There were all these tapes that were left over that Brian Koo already took because Robert was no longer chief referee and Robert was going to throw them out.
Robert, okay.
And so
he wasn't going to like necessarily throw them out right at that minute, but at some point he was.
Well, it was the last of the boxes. Brian Koo came and picked up them. There was a box that was left over because part of that, and the reason why he had those tapes is because they were all the bounties that he paid for. It just so happened that Chris Ira's tape that with that was in there, and part of Bill's Perfect Pac-Man tape was in there. That was it. Those tapes were actually Robert's.
So you took those 2 boxes or 1 box?
There was just 1 box. It was just a small box with 20 tapes in it.
So you took the 1 box home, and then you started like reviewing the tapes, seeing if there's anything good on it, and then you came across Chris's Perfect Pac-Man part of it,
tape,
whatever.
yeah.
Okay, so that's like the second part of the story. And then you copied it and sent it to me, and then I reviewed it, and I could not resist. I phoned up immediately and said, like, you thought I would never see this? Well, guess what? I just watched it. Like, and then, like, everything starts, like, spinning, and, like, their theory is you have the original tape, the full like unedited game, and you made this like hacked up version and sent it to me in order to make it appear that they had sent it in. And I thought, no way, Dwayne is not that devious. Like this, that's like an evil genius or something. Like this, like. I was like, okay, maybe Dwayne can manipulate certain things. I don't think he'd go that far. Like, and then your theory is they sent it in as, like you said. Now the problem is I have not seen the original, like, and that's like a big, like, missing part of the puzzle for me. But,
well, I can send you a picture of the tape.
Yeah, because like I was asked a question, like what, like was written on the outside tape. I said, I don't know. I haven't seen the original tape. I've seen.
Greg's seen the original tape. It was perfect, Chris's Perfect Pac-Man pattern, or Perfect Pac-Man patterns.
All right.
And it was taped over a junior performance.
Man, that's exactly what I have. All right. So then I come up with my own theory, and I say, isn't it possible Chris like sent in this tape as he said he did, the full fucking thing to Robert Merzak, and then Robert Merzak edited it. And then had, like, I don't know what happened to the original. Like, Who knows?
No, Robert never had the original. Robert it came from Walter. All that stuff came from Walter. Walter.
All right, so Walter edited it and then it got sent on. Like,
why would Walter have done that? He would need 2 VCRs to do that. Why would he? And don't forget about the lights on, lights off. Your theory about the lights on, like the lights on, lights off. Like they're turning the camera on and off because they don't want anybody to see the 1 second patterns.
Oh my! So it's like no matter what, it's a conspiracy.
Well, no matter what, it's not a complete.
It's either a conspiracy by you, or it's a conspiracy by them. See, my solution, like I know, I'm like. See, it's like I'm the fucking mediator, like just trying to come up with like something.
There is no gray area. It's either yes or no. Is that a legitimate tape or not? And if
no, beyond that though, like okay, you can say like that is an illegitimate tape, but you're even asking like more than that. You're saying there is no legitimate tape.
No, I'm saying they have.
No legitimate tape was ever submitted. That's your claim.
That's what I claim. Yeah,
and you don't have evidence for that. You should have like circumstantial evidence.
Well, but there's no evidence that they did send a tape in either.
Yeah, because where is it? Like that's true.
And that's how Lucy. Because you remember, Bill isn't the referee. Who validated that score? He's calling up Walter at 3 o'clock in the morning and saying, "Here's the new world record. Here's the time in the tape."
Yeah.
How is that? Who else gets that kind of treatment?
I guess like, oh my gosh, the hardest thing for me about this is. It's not only like Bill lying. Like if it was just Bill, I'd say okay, I agree with you, Dwayne. Like, fine. But it's like Bill, Chris, Walter. It's like a big fucking conspiracy, and I'm like, it's only a fucking Pac-Man game. Like,
no, but they've already done that before, and so like that's the whole thing. And this leads to the next question, where the people who still drink the Kool-Aid, the thing they say is. Bill and Chris are 2 of the most well-respected gamers. Do you know what you're saying? And then they never answer my question. That's where they end the discussion. Obviously, after
I'm not saying that exactly.
No, but answer that. Just talk about that. Why is it that there's this mystique around Bill and Chris?
Well, I know why. Because like they were like some of the original supporters back in the '80s, and they have this like reputation for getting like really good scores back in the '80s. Like I'm not saying like lately. Like maybe Chris has lately. I don't know. Okay, so, but mainly his stuff is in the 80s, and that is true. Like that's not disputed. But, and like that's the answer to your question. Like, why are they so respected and revered and like blah 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 like this? Now, when you're asking me like the question, like I wasn't putting them on that level. I'm just saying like it takes like. Chris lying, Bill lying, Walter lying, and I don't know, whoever else is involved, like Robert Mirzak, I guess.
No, Robert wasn't a referee at that time. He had no knowledge of it. He was just sitting in the box. He didn't even know it was there. That's how lucky.
How did it get to his place?
Walter sent all the shit to him when he became the chief scorekeeper. Walter was sued. He was tied up with lawsuits for like 2 or 3 years.
Okay, so Walter got the tape.
In 2000. In 2000.
Sent it there.
Like he sent it there like around 2003.
So you're saying that the mistake possibly is Chris Era taped the game, sent it to Walter, and Walter was not supposed to like send it on anywhere.
Yeah,
but Walter, his scatterbrained mind, forgot, ended up in Robert's session
house.
And then your session eventually.
Yeah. Well, and that's what it says on the tape. It says, Walter, make sure you don't show anybody this.
Oh man.
You remember he says that. Chris Ira says that. But anyways, I'll show it from the tape because that's what it says.
But it's so messed up because like, if you take it to like the ultimate like level of what you're talking about, it's like them accusing you of being the evil genius and like you dubbed it and sent it to me to make me think that's what got sent in. And then the truth is, they're the ones who sent it in exactly like that, and you're like the one who came across it and dubbed it exactly as it is and sent it to me. Oh my! It's
well,
like,
and it wasn't even so much that I sent you to show Chris couldn't get a perk back because I can't. I won't say he can't because I know he did. That's why I would put the dollar on him, man. I put the money on him. He's my boy.
Right.
He did it in the '80s, motherfucker.
No, he didn't.
Yeah, but anyways, what the point is, it's what he said after. He admitted that if it wasn't for your perfect Pac-Man patterns, he wouldn't have been able to get the speed record
True.
And they invented that whole new category.
True.
And so this thing where Bill is first, Chris is fastest, they did that intentionally to screw you.
True.
And that's what bothers me. I didn't know that.
So if you're going to go the route you're saying, it's like they didn't want anyone getting a hold of those 1 second patterns.
Yeah.
And it's like the way the tape was submitted, they figured there'd be like some special exception. But as far as like, did Chris do it? I think he did. But you're saying, oh, should it, like, is the proof good enough? And like, they're breaking the rules, and like, you're more saying that, like, you believe he did it.
Oh no, I don't doubt that he did it. It just, if he never fully recorded, how can you have that for a time?
Right.
It has to be scrutinized because it's not fair. Is it fair? Is it on a level playing field? Just by that standard, it is not. But it has to go to unofficial status until he proves otherwise.
Right.
It's the same. It's the same thing. And you know, so
have you challenged it? I don't know.
Yeah, that's what.
And what happened? Like
nothing happened. That's why Chris Ira started swearing at Greg Sekundiak on the forums and was going to get kicked off because I showed that tape to Greg, and he called David Nelson and told him about that and wanted it to be challenged, and it was ignored. Well, and the funny thing is, who actually validated that tape? Bill isn't supposed to be referee, but he called Walter at 2 in the morning and told him he holds up the stopwatch, and that's accepted as the record?
You're the one who actually made that tape, and you're making up this story that you found in the box.
I sent an email to the higher ups in Twin Galaxies and told them that I wanted to talk to them about the tape because I saw the tape, and I said that it shouldn't have been accepted, but I never got a reply. So, but I just think that it shouldn't have been done, and it shouldn't have been done that way. And if Bill did verify it, it shouldn't have been accepted.
Going to give him the details. Chris Ira admits that, you know, he reluctantly sent the tape into Walter, didn't want anybody to see the tape or his 1 second patterns or whatever, and they never showed the 1 second pattern, so automatically off the top his score actually should be invalidated because he doesn't have a continuous tape submission. And if they're going to say, well, Bill validated, well, Bill was sleeping through most of that, how the hell did he validate it? So you know, we're going to move on to talk a little bit about what actually happened with Bill and Rick, and move on to Bill Bastable story. So going to keep rolling. That's the most painful thing. Like, it's in Twin Galaxies' best interest to promote Billy Mitchell and make him a superstar.
Right. It's not that like just anybody got a perfect score. It's that Billy Mitchell got a perfect score.
That's pretty funny. Well, yeah.
Right? I'm right though, right?
Yeah, no, that's the story the world's been told, eh? That's the story. Well, so what happened was, after Bill broke the agreement, he got all this publicity, and he went to Japan, and I didn't know what happened because I wasn't there at that first fun spot, but how I did get back in contact was Bill put out these bounty poster for breaking old world records, and also for this idea if anybody can get by the split screen. And one of the ironies that I didn't realize at the time is that why it's important that they did or they didn't promote Rick is that Bill never went to Japan till later on in August, I think it was, and so Rick already had his perfect Pac-Man before Bill went to Japan, and they didn't really want anybody to know about. That's why they covered it up. So we'll just go through a little bit of that, and showing that they intentionally didn't really want anybody to know about Rick Fothergill's perfect Pac-Man, and it was done intentionally.
Okay, I am going to get perfect score on Pac-Man this month.
Yeah.
So I had 28 days left. So right at the end of the month, July 31st, I drive 650 miles, put 1 credit in, and bam, straight through, did it. And then I go to the
phone Walter.
I phone Walter, gets Bill on the phone, and he says, "Isn't this kind of like bringing your like boxing gloves and like after the fight is over and like this I thought, whatever. Like, my whole point is, like I wanted to do it the same month, and like, if he hadn't been so like snaky about it.
Never beat anybody when he was supposedly, doing things honorably for America in the going for the perfect Pac-Man.
Well, I mean, the simple fact of if someone's going to make a comment or a pact or agreement between other gamers to be on the up and up and say, hey man, let's just go head-to-head competition on a certain day, and then all of a sudden they forego that and decide to make a high score without the original agreement. I mean, what credibility is it about a gamer if he's trying to honor one thing and then doing another? I mean, are you that afraid of losing a potential score or notoriety that you would have to go to that kind of depths to make a high score? I mean, I don't know. I personally wouldn't do it. I would think that, as a gamer, as a competitive gamer, I am, and if I agreed to play against another gamer or gamers, that I would want to go public and I'd want to show the public who the better gamer is, whether it be them or myself or whoever. But to sit there and do something on a slick like that just, it's underhanded. I mean, it's not fair to the other gamer, and yet to make a world record first and get credit for it, that's very deceptive. Why? What is the reasoning behind that?
Like, the thing I didn't know, which actually really offended me, and I think is just, the whole thing that why I think Bill Mitchell's an asshole, this is one reason, is that for him to go and do that after breaking that promise, you guys are going to play head-to-head, because Chris Ira said, and if I would have said the same thing, I would have said that Chris Ira and you are better Pac-Man players than Bill, and if Bill had to face you guys head-to-head, he wouldn't have beat you. One of you two would have got the perfect game before he would have.
Superior player in Pac-Man than Bill Mitchell is. He's always been a better player. And what do you have to say about that, Chris?
I'm not going to comment on that because, Bill might say something about it.
Well, we know the truth, don't we, or do we?
Well,
and then to make it a national issue, and because every time you read those articles where he talks about you dressed up as Captain Canada or whatever like that, it was never at that point till he made it an issue, and it's like he's competing for the U.S. against nobody. It's like, what is that? It's like, oh, good job, Bill, you beat yourself, did you?
This article was written on the 10th year anniversary of the first perfect Pac-Man, quote unquote, according to Twin Galaxies, Walter and Bill. And Bill called Rick up at this time, and he calls him up and says, guess what day it is? And he goes, oh, it's the 10th anniversary of me landing on the moon, or me getting the first perfect Pac-Man. I thought, what an asshole. Who the hell calls a guy up like it's like some juvenile in high school, a bully calling a kid up after 10 years. You still remember how I screwed you? You remember how I used to tease you? Remember how I used to bully you? It's like, what an asshole. And then at the same time, he has, in 2000, him and Chris Ira were there, and no one talked about what actually happened, and I didn't know what happened. They had a machine, or on the Pac-Man machine, they had this joke about the 9 dots, that Rick missed the 9 dots, and in this Wired article, they're talking about how Bill's claiming that he played somebody head-to-head, so he outright lied. And again, like, they've been making up this story and they've been ignoring the facts, and no one knows enough to check on it. I didn't know until I found this stuff out, and I thought it's just ridiculous. And another thing, Bill is so bizarre. He used to put his son on the phone when he was talking to Rick, and he would get his son to make jokes about Rick missing the 9 dots. I thought, what a fucking asshole.
Rick and Chris did it no problem right after Bill did it, but the way Walter played it is that he never gave them any recognition because it would have downplayed Bill's recognition, and then Walter wouldn't be able to use Bill to promote himself and promote Twin Galaxies. Because it's like I said, that perfect Pac-Man isn't that fucking hard. They've got patterns to get all the blue time ghosts, like right down to a science. It's, it's not that hard, and just the way that it was, it's just nobody really cares. And then the reason why it actually caught the public's imagination was simply because it was the 20th anniversary of Pac-Man, and the way that they put that Galaxies Pac-Man combo together, and Namco could use that as a marketing tool. Like, that was a lot to do with it. It wasn't that it was just a significant achievement. Then you put up some statistical numbers. Oh, Pac-Man's been played this many times, and there's never been a perfect game, and you create all these crazy numbers, and then everyone goes crazy. Well, now after that 500 millionth game, like that one token was spent and we got a perfect game or whatever. Walter intentionally didn't tell anybody that Rick did this because it would have actually reduced Bill's limelight. And like
Almost stole his thunder.
That was Walter's quote. Like that's totally manipulative. See, that's what people don't understand. Walter manipulates people and players all the time.
No.
Yeah, you did on July 31st, 1990, and you didn't get
January 9th, 2000.
Yeah,
so
like
that's what 5 months later.
You know, and that's the thing. Like that to me was like I thought that was a real ignorant thing for both of them to do. Totally manipulative. I didn't know what happened until I talked to Rick here recently about it, and I thought, well, that'd make an interesting story for people to know.
Bill plays without patterns because he groups, which is a very slow. It doesn't mean he can't play. It's a very slow, archaic sort of Neanderthal way of playing. It was what they knew in the 80s, and since then people have made patterns and continuous forward motion patterns to group them on the fly basically and get every 1600 every power pellet, and that's how Rick played, and that's why Rick was better. He had far superior technology. And even when Bill went to Japan to get his nominal award called the Player of the Century from Namco, he didn't use his slap hazard grouping technique, because everyone would say, well, this is very boring to watch. Aesthetically, these continuous forward motion patterns are very interesting to watch. High level skill, very fast, yet it's down to very precise timing, and if you don't make your turns right, they won't work properly, but when you do execute, it's very beautiful to watch. Have taken too long versus because there's the myth that grouping or clumping is superior than patterns.
Right.
That's bullshit.
Yes, and a lot of people don't understand that.
It's eloquent symmetry. Like, it's beautiful. It's an aesthetically pleasing way to watch Pac-Man to get a perfect game. It's incredible.
Okay, so when Bill is playing, and I can do this too. You can loop around and pause, hit walls here and there, and park it and stuff like that, and you can get the monsters close together, and then you go and take them to the Energizer and get your 1600. Now, when I'm playing and I want to go fast, it's I have to do this on the fly. It's I'm grouping them as I'm going, and I can't stop, and I have to bring them towards the Energizer as I'm maneuvering and eating the dots, and yes, that's why I would say it's more aesthetically pleasing, because I'm not stopping, I'm just going all the way through, and getting all 4 16s every time. And I put this on the internet with Neil Chapman, and I'm saying okay, here it is, everyone, go for it, and here's actually a really fast way to do it, but I don't know, there's this controversy of is there more skill in being able to group them and all this, well, when I'm doing those patterns, aren't I grouping? I'm just grouping on the fly, this.
Making it look real simple, because that's the mystique. Bill has to create this illusion that he did something far superior and that can never be done, and no one had the knowledge or whatever like that, and it's all bullshit.
And Bill did not group for all the freaking boards.
That's the inconsistency in his logic.
He gets the 9th key and he used a pattern.
So Bill used Rick's patterns to show off, and they don't give credit to anybody. They have everybody convinced that Chris was the fastest perfect Pac-Man player and that he had all this technology himself. He stole it from him. Or it's not that he stole it from him, it's that he never gave credit to where he got it from, because they don't want anybody to know about these other players and other players that are better than them. And so, that's about how these things go.
Bill Mitchell gives Bill Mitchell the thumbs up, but nobody else does.
So the one thing I never noticed until I actually started looking at it, I'm sure no one else noticed this either, that in Walter's last book, they mention all the perfect Pac-Man players, and they mentioned it in their write-up that they got a perfect Pac-Man. Rick Fothergill is the only guy they never mentioned that he got a perfect Pac-Man. And as well, even at the Mall of America event, when they're promoting Rick, and Bill's there at the same time, they never mentioned that Rick was a perfect Pac-Man player. Like, they did everything they could to make sure Rick never really got any attention, so no one could ask him any questions. And the other thing about Rick's story is that everyone else that gave press releases for their perfect Pac-Man accomplishments, they never gave Rick a press release to announce his perfect Pac-Man because they didn't want any journalists asking him any questions.
This is how Bill Mitchell and Walter Day controls the media. They can and will selectively lock out information from the public that will go against an agenda that they have for drumming up publicity for TG. In this particular case, if Rick Fothergill publicly did the first million on Pac-Man, in hindsight, I don't think the media would have made such a big deal about it. But Bill Mitchell was portrayed in the media as one of the superstars from the 80s, a known gamer. Rick Fothergill wasn't known in the 80s. Chris Ira was, but I have a feeling that Walter, because of Bill's prominence and because Bill fronts Twin Galaxies, Walter wanted Bill Mitchell to be the first perfect Pac-Man player. Bill Mitchell orchestrated, which is the perfect word for this, the fact that he pulled it off at Fun Spot by denying the people that he swore he would go head-to-head with them against, by denying them a chance to do it with them. He jumped the gun, he took the glory, and Bill Mitchell has profited from it, both financially and in terms of public prominence ever since.
Bill Mitchell gives Bill Mitchell the thumbs up, but nobody else does.
One other point here in Walter's book, he's talking about Bill Mitchell in this bounty poster. Walter's saying that Bill offered $300,000 worth of bounties. That's a lie. Walter lies all the time. You just have to simply do the math on the poster. It was $100,000 for the split screen. There were 10,000 bounties for scores on certain games over 1 million points, and another 15 games with $1,000. So that works out to be $195,000. And out of all those quote-unquote prize monies, the only ones that were won was Tutankhamun Dig Dug that I did, and Bill also paid Fred Pastore for Carnival. Well, that brings us to the next point there. After Bill got his perfect Pac-Man, he put that 100,000 up. Like, was it worthwhile, or like, because what was the whole point of that? Because we all, like, anybody who knows anything about Pac-Man knows you can't get past the split screen exactly by those reasons you explained.
Well, he wanted to, like, prove it to the world, like this. And I don't know.
Well, my question is now in hindsight, do you think a better question would have been, has anybody else got a perfect score by the modern definition? And without payment, before he makes these ludicrous claims?
Oh, he couldn't. No, he couldn't ask that question.
No, but would that have been a good question to ask, though?
Oh, sure, it's a good question. You get past the split screen. Like, you don't even have to get perfect. You just, like, show me you can get past the split screen, and you'll win $100,000. And he figured, like, anyone, like, with that knowledge, they would want to take advantage of that and take that $100,000 to the bank. Like, and there wasn't, like, a single taker. Like, no one, like, put any interest in that, because obviously it cannot be done. This, which we already knew. Like,
but there are only two people that...
It's just like hammering over the head, like someone trying to prove the earth is flat. Like, no, it's not, you fucking idiot. And I know what you're saying, like, okay, a better question would have been blah, 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 like, or a different question would have been, like, but obviously, like, he couldn't ask that, but I guess that's what this is all about, like, how come he couldn't ask that, like, and there's like, in my opinion, overwhelming evidence that it was done like prior to 1999.
It all started when I first heard rumors that potentially Bill wasn't the first perfect Pac-Man player, and that's how it all started. I never really went looking to find this story, but it sort of ended up on my lap, and I started inquiring about everything.
On the computer, on the internet, I came across Bill Bastable. There was a few references to Bill Bastable on Usenet. Now it's not Usenet anymore. Now they call it Google Groups. So if anybody wanted to find out about Bill Bastable, they could log on to Google Groups, and those messages are still there. But I believe these messages were dated from 1991, and Bill Bill wasn't posting himself. There was a reporter, an ABC affiliate, who was talking about Bill, and they were talking about a score of 915,000 on Miss Pac-Man, and the idea was that he got to the end, he completed the game, and he couldn't get any further, and it just became a matter of luck what prizes you would get. But perhaps more significantly, Bill Bastable was claiming that he got a perfect game back in the late 1980s, I believe, and there was some evidence to suggest that he did that.
If someone of Mark Longridge's reputation and experience discovered that a player named Bill Bastable got a perfect Pac-Man before Bill Mitchell did, and he told Walter Day, for Walter to ignore that is reprehensible and outrageous based on Mark's experience and reputation.
A 29-year-old Sarasota man says he may set a Guinness World Book of Records tonight. Bill Bastable put a quarter in a Ms. Pac-Man machine at 11:30 this morning and finished the game 9 hours and 45 minutes and 133 mazes later. His score, 915,180. That beat the old record held by a Miami man by 40,000 points. Bastable says his biggest worry was the Pirates Cove, where he was playing, would have to close before he beat the record. As it turned out, that wasn't a problem. He says when the maze hit 134, it was upside down and the machine automatically cleared itself. No other word on that other than must have just given up.
I don't know how he did that.
In the late 80s, after arcades started to disband, there was a lot of hardware out there that could be purchased. They were selling entire Pac-Man machines for $50 for a while there. And so it would be very, very simple for someone in the late 1980s to get their hands on the hardware and to do the rack advance and study the game and get the perfect game. So that seems plausible to me that someone's done it before. It doesn't seem like it would even be that difficult. I mean, Bill was highly regarded by this reporter, and they considered him to be one of the best Pac-Man players in the world, and it's just a question of being at the right place at the right time. He just wasn't at any of the Twin Galaxies events, and there were a lot of people that were good players that weren't at Twin Galaxies events, and there was a lot of people that perhaps didn't get the credit they deserved, but that was just the nature of the thing. There weren't a lot of contest locations outside of the United States, and Bill just. Chris Ira and some of the other Pac-Man players were talking about Bill Bastable a long time ago, and they were certainly aware of him, but he wasn't actually at any of the Twin Galaxies events, so his scores were never really included. Stuff. I think that at least Bill should be mentioned in the historical context. I mean, if he was doing stuff in the late 80s, it sounds like he might have done something that he might have been the first guy to do it, actually, so I mean they should at least acknowledge that.
Yeah,
I can't remember, but I did mention it to him, and but Walter was probably aware of it even before I talked to him about it.
Okay, so this is why I think Bill Bastable did it, and Bill Bastable, by the way, is not even saying that he wants to be officially recognized. He's saying just unofficially, you guys know, I did it. And, okay, so here's a photograph, and, all the information, was correct, when I looked at it. And one of the things, I was very skeptical. And I told Dwayne here, like I said, like, I want you to look at the high score on the photograph. And then you told me 999, 910. And I said, okay, that checks out. If that had been like less, like 999, 500 or something, I would have said bullshit right away. Because there's like a mathematic like thing that happens, like, and if you're in a perfect score run, like that, like the high score has to end up being at least 999, 700. And like depending on the pattern you're using, like it's actually could be 999, 990, 990, like which it was like in my game. So like yeah, that checked out, and then like I looked and like all the dots are gone, and like
he parked it in the spot there through the screen, eh? To take the photograph.
Yeah, and like, and then okay, like you have to look at the counterpoint. Like okay, like this could have been faked. Like okay, he could have like knew all this information. If he's like really good, maybe he knew that the high score would end up being that. Like, and okay, so he set it up so the high score was that, and then like he actually only got like 1 million something, and like used the rack test and stuff, and like set it up so like he kills off his men and like eats like the dots, so like, and not even like all of them, like he just has to get rid of all the visible dots, not the invisible dots. Like like can like set up the photograph, and like, and I said okay, like yes, like, but like I think it would be easier like just to do it. Like if you have the knowledge to do it, I think it would just be easier to do it. Like, and like this is why like the thing with Chris Era is important. Like Chris Era knew about the 9 dots. Chris Era went to meet Bill Bastable. Bill Bastable claims that he got the information from Chris Era. Is it plausible? Yes, because Chris likes to like be able to say like I know more than you, right? And so, and then like okay, I see the diagram. There's a reporter involved. He has a date. He has like a file folder, and he puts this information from Bill Bastable in. So like now you have the diagram, you have the picture, you have the information that we already know. Like Bill Bastable knows what he's doing. Like, and then there's something with the picture roll, right? That had a date on it. Like
yeah, there's a timestamp date on the back of the photograph that the journalist has had since 1988.
Yeah, so like yeah, you have the picture plus the date stamp, plus the diagram, plus the date stamp, plus the like visit from Chris Era. Like okay, it's all circumstantial, yes, but like it's like a mountain of circumstantial evidence, like, and like to me, like okay, he's not asking to be officially recognized, so like to me it's okay, let him have it. Like this, like to me he's past like the burden of proof. Like this,
did get a perfect Pac-Man, and as I found out later on through communicating with Bill Held, it definitely happened on September 2nd, 1988.
All this stuff took place in the 80s. I mean, there wasn't, and there's no doubt in my mind that he did all this. I mean, he showed me the pictures of. I saw him in person a number of times. I mean, he was just absolutely awesome. I mean, I can't imagine anybody being any better at those video games, especially in the mid-'80s primarily, and through the end of the decade.
That he called Bill Bastable in 1999, 2 or 3 days after he got his perfect Pac-Man, because Todd Rogers' show validates the same thing. It's like, this actually happened. We didn't know that.
I'll agree to that.
Yeah,
yes, that happened. Like, that's fine.
No formulas about the perfect Pac-Man, and to Bill Mitchell's assumption is that he didn't think that Bill Bastable had the perfect Pac-Man and the dot factor and everything else that was involved. But after going to Bill Bastable's house and seeing a photo that was in a series of photos that was from the 80s, it just it sort of corroborates that maybe possibly, you know, to my best looking into things, that Bill Bastable possibly might be having the perfect Pac-Man. I mean, there was no doctoring of photos. They had no photo shop programs or anything like that where you can doctor a photo unless you were, you know, someone who was in the photography department.
But yeah, I mean, looking at the pictures, all the pictures that he had, and having the perfect Pac-Man and a 900,000, 9910 or whatever, or 990 on the Miss Pac-Man. I mean, it was pretty amazing.
Todd, Bill said, how is, that other guy doesn't know about the 9 dots, and this is where it's really quite funny because the whole story goes where Chris Iyer and him are supposed to be the two most well-respected players, or a couple of the most well-respected players, long-time achievement, been at this for a long time. Yet no one ever would have thought that they've been lying and manipulating and would do anything to sabotage other players. But now in hindsight, you can see a trail of intentional misrepresentation and intentional trying to discredit other players just so they can have their high score, which is really quite bizarre.
That Chris feels like he put his foot in his mouth, that he underestimated what Bill Bastable was capable of, and he realized that, maybe he shouldn't have talked about that, because now it undermines Bill Mitchell.
From over a decade earlier.
Right,
because Bill and Chris, they're good at keeping secrets like that. They like to hold one up or one over on you, eh?
Yeah.
I mean, there's so many things out there that need to come clear or come forward with, and if they're upstanding gamers, how I suspect they all should be, they should all come forward and discuss what's at hand. I think at this point the ball lies in Bill Mitchell's court to come forward and to divulge what exactly happened, and if he really feels himself the first person to get a perfect Pac-Man, he should defend that fact. All kidding aside, we're all gamers, let's be adult about it and set the record straight to say exactly how things happen. And if Bill Bastable got a first perfect Pac-Man, then Bill Mitchell should explain his reasons why he seems to agree that he's the first person to get a first perfect Pac-Man.
And to ignore that history is a crime because he did it. He's a tremendous player, a very skilled player, but because if you listen to Walter and Bill, who are trying to control the storyline, they've totally ignored him, where I'm saying, no, that's not right and that's not true, that Bill Bastable should be acknowledged for what he did. Todd, what do you see there on the picture of the that he's holding?
Perfect Pac-Man with a split screen and a perfect score of 3,333,360.
Congratulations, Mr. Bill Bastable.
Thank you.
So what I didn't know and what everybody else doesn't know, in 1999 when Bill went to do his score, he was actually the owner of Twin Galaxies, the referee that validated his score, and the player. Walter wasn't there. There was no one else there to validate the tape that he recorded, and the press release went out as if it was actually validated.
I didn't verify the tape. I'm not a referee, contrary to the movie. I've never been a referee. I've never verified a score of any kind in 23 years. God, was even longer than that. 26 years. I've never verified a score. I've never been a referee.
I heard that Bill Mitchell actually, gave Walter a lot of money in exchange for, majority ownership in Twin Galaxies.
Well, and at that point in time, Bill was one of the main sole shareholders in the company at that time too, which Jeff Peters informed me about, which really is quite ironic. Walter Day has no money. Bill's the one who supported him the whole time.
Billy's story is unraveling little by little. His storybook achievement of the perfect Pac-Man, which he got a lot of media attention for, is showing some chinks in its ironclad aspects, such as Bill Bastable, the person who did the perfect before he did. He is basically trying to stop all the plugs from getting out, those that can expose what happened. Bill Mitchell had a plan, just as he says in the movie, to get the first perfect Pac-Man. He did so on the backs of two of his best friends, Chris Iyer and Rick Fothergill. He did so against the accomplishments of a former player, Bill Bastable, who did it before him. And in working in concert with Walter Day, they basically pulled the wool over the media's eyes, and they promoted Bill to no ends, to the greatest extent that Twin Galaxies ever has for a player, and ignored Bill Bastable's accomplishment in the process. That's a shame.
The story that him and Walter have told, Bill and Walter, is that, oh, I did it in 6 hours, and then they're in collusion and they actually changed it in Guinness to 5.5. Who the hell does actually do these scores exact? So you can tell right away that they're lying, but I know for a fact that if the tape is validated and checked out by a second party or a third party, it will show that it took him over 6 hours. So not only morally should he have not been there and secretly went and done what he did, but technically and rule-wise, he actually should be disqualified for actually doing what he did, because he never followed the rules, both the Guinness rules and just the regular rules we had for setting a world record on a video game. Important part of the story. And again, it shows our character, Bill Bastable's character, and Bill Mitchell's character, and Chris Ira. Because I got Chris Ira's email saying, oh, supposedly you got a perfect game, where's his proof? Well, why didn't you find out that you created so much distrust for this guy and suspicion because of the way you treated him? And because we treated him fair, he's not afraid to tell us what happened, and that's okay. So I contacted Chris Ira when I started investigating this stuff, and you can see the emails there where he actually says Bill's a great player, and when I did ask him about whether Bill Bastable had a perfect Pac-Man and knew anything, his answer was, well, where's his proof? You know, and then I find out in just recently, not only did Chris know because Bill knew and Walter knew, but Bill Mitchell actually called Bill Bastable on the phone and talked to him in 1999, a few days after he got his perfect Pac-Man. And Bill Bastable was saying, you know, I got one too. And he actually sent Chris Ira a picture, and Chris Ira has that picture in his possession right now. And he doesn't see anything wrong with holding out and not telling people that someone else got a perfect Pac-Man and that they've been keeping this secret for a long time. So you have to question all these guys' character. So now you can see we've got some more accurate history about what actually happened. So Bill Bastable actually should be recognized for getting it done first. Then Bill Mitchell actually should be disqualified both morally for lack of character and being a sneak, a fraud, and a liar, as well as technically because he played way too long and took way too many breaks and lied about his score, him and Walter putting in a faster time in Guinness. So then that leaves Mr. Rick Fothergill, the Canadian, in second place, doing it honorably, fast, and with patterns, and showing more superior knowledge. Then we have Chris Ira, who actually used Rick's patterns and used his own 9th key pattern to have a faster time, but there's no way we could actually prove he has a faster time because they never submitted a complete tape. No one actually seen it. So Chris Ira has to be moved to unofficial status because he has no actual proof to show they did a continuous game for a time score. Then we come to Mr. Tim Balderramos from Minnesota, a great player. And last but not least, Donald Hayes, who actually did it the same way Bill did it, by grouping, and he actually is in 4th place.